To access translation of the agenda, click the top of the web page using the word English for translation into multiple languages. Meeting interpretation services are available via Zoom by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen. Ms. Espinoza, you're on. Mr. Gonzalez, can you help us?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I just need, could you repeat it and I'll translate it as you go? I apologize. I should have written it.
To access translation of the agenda,
Para participar en la agenda,
click the top of the web page
por favor apriete a la parte de arriba de la página de internet
using the word English for translation.
usando la palabra de inglés para traducción
into multiple languages.
en varios idiomas.
Meeting interpretation services
Los servicios para interpretación
are available via Zoom
están disponibles por Zoom
by clicking on the globe icon
por medio de hacer clic en el globo abajo
at the bottom of the screen.
en la parte de abajo de la pantalla.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkin, Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. I would like to welcome everyone to this June 23rd regular meeting of the Board of Education. The mission of the West Contra Costa Unified School District is to prepare students for post-secondary education and to be responsible, thinking, contributing members of our global society. We believe in public education as the most important function in a democratic society. We believe we must treat everyone with courtesy, dignity, and respect, provide safe and nurturing environments in which to learn, teach, work, and participate, serve our students while working as partners with our community to develop well-rounded, lifelong learners and contributing members of a global society. Take responsibility for our behavior and performance to ensure the highest possible achievement of all students, employees, and our school community. Provide equitable and essential communication and support for successful learning, teaching, working, and participating. Respect, celebrate, and welcome the diversity, uniqueness, and contributions of all members of our school community. Members of the board must endeavor to attend all meetings, study all materials presented with the agenda prior to attending the meeting, participate in the discussion of any items which come before the board, and vote on all motions and resolutions, abstaining only for compelling reasons. Dr. Hurst, may we please have the roll call?
Absolutely. President Phillips.
Present.
Trustee Clerk Smith Folds.
Good evening, everyone present.
Trustee Reckler.
Good evening to everyone present.
Trustee Gonzalez Hoy.
Good evening, present.
Trustee Christian.
Good evening, present.
All present and accounted for. Hoorah.
Thank you very much, sir. We actually recessed closed session and we need to go back in to finish some things up. So we're going to hold on the report until later because we're not done with closed session. And we are going to move into item B6, which is public comment. And before we begin, I would like to, well, Dr. Hurst, how about you explain what your recommendation is to us and to the public and where it came from? And then after you do that, I'm going to ask for a motion to suspend the rules to be able to do your recommendation.
Absolutely, sir. The board and the superintendent have been undergoing retreat sessions in which have been sponsored by an organization called Leadership Associates. Inside those sessions, we've had several conversations ranging from strengthening superintendent relationships with the board to roles and responsibilities. Specifically, we have talked about several items discussing what the superintendent does and also what the board does. And we frame that in conversation of the what and the how. And the superintendent does the how, the board does the what, and really specifies the goals. However, there's been other conversations as well when we've been looking at protocols. And one of the protocols we have discussed in those meetings have been around public comment. And really the conversation came up looking at really our meetings and streamlining our meetings. And Leadership Associates asked me as a superintendent to make a recommendation to the board about public comment. Where's the best place for public comment? I did recommend to the board that public comment is at the front and that it covers all items, non-agendized and agendized items, that it will be extended from 1.5 minutes for each person to 2 minutes. And also overall public comment will be extended for 1 hour. And that was my recommendation to the board and for those reasons.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hurst. So board, our bylaws lay out how we're supposed to do public comment. And that's what we're required to follow. In order for me to be able to deviate and to facilitate this in a different way than what's laid out in the bylaws, I need to ask for a motion to suspend our bylaws and to be able to do what Dr. Hurst just said. So I am asking for a motion to suspend our bylaws temporarily for me to be able to conduct public comment in the manner just described by Dr. Hurst, which is all public comment is to happen now in this item. It's for 1 hour and 2 minutes apiece. Can I please have a motion to suspend the bylaws to allow me to do that?
President Phillips, I have a question about it. My question is, will all hands have to be raised now, or can hands be raised throughout the hour?
All hands will be raised, but I'll do it the same way I always do it. So, I mean, I try to give people, you know, a lot of time to raise their hands. I do countdowns and all that stuff. So, the rules that would be changing are the things that Dr. Hurst just said. But can I have a motion to do that? Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy?
I'll make a motion to suspend the public comment. Is there a specific number of bylaw that you want us to suspend? Not just all bylaws?
Remember that
Or?
no, only not all of the bylaws. Be like, woohoo! But specifically only to allow, and I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's basically our bylaws and then our rules of order. Both lay it out, and the rules of order are adopted through our bylaws. So I'm just asking to be able to suspend our bylaws and rules of order specifically to be able to do what Dr. Hurst just said.
Okay, so moved.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. We're going to take the vote on this, and we're starting with, yes, ma'am.
Will there be any discussion?
I'm sorry. So it's been moved and seconded. It was moved by Gonzalez Hoy, was seconded by Christian. Um, is there any discussion? And I see that there is, and I apologize for jumping right in there. I'm just going to ask in order. Mr. Christian, do you have any comments?
No.
Gonzalez Hoy, do you have any comments?
Just a quick one, President Phillips. I just want to encourage the public that we are trying something new. So if it's not something the public likes, to let us know so that then we can pivot, right? But we're gonna try new things to see what works best. And I see no problem with trying this if our previous system wasn't working for the public. So I'm in full support of trying and seeing if we need to pivot.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Reckler?
Yeah, I just have a couple of things to say, which is that after deep contemplation, I'm concerned about making this move. I don't believe that it adequately includes the public in the discussions of the people's business and doesn't carry forward the spirit embedded in the Brown Act, preserving the public's right to know and comment upon matters of the board. I would find it impossible to give a decent public comment without hearing the presentation first. And I believe it denies the public the opportunity to weigh in with the best information available and denies the board the best information in decision making. As well, I believe there are some inequities for our parents that read and speak Spanish, since the agenda is printed only in English, and there could be additional barriers if they're not able to hear the agenda and comment. If all public comment is held prior to the translation of the presentation, I believe we may have created another barrier. That being said, I'm willing to try it, but I would like a date as to when we could come back and revisit it. Thank you.
Mrs. Smith-Bowles?
I think for me, one of the things I want to make sure is that we are clear with the process. So if it's going to be an hour at the very beginning and we're just trying it, but if it's going to be an hour at the very beginning, we make sure that we are able to get everyone in that wants to be in within that hour time, not just at the beginning before we start taking public comment, because that's very different than how we've done it before. So the way we've done it before is there's an item, raise your hand at the end of the last Mr. Phillips asked questions, and then we'll have public comment. That's not how we're doing it now. Now we're saying public comment is going to happen. So I want to ensure that everyone has enough time to know that if I just jumped on in the meeting 15 minutes in, I can still raise my hand if so necessary. I think that's something that the board needs to talk about if this is a policy that we continue to do past tonight. Again, I want to make sure that we're able to ensure equity and we're able to have a good policy for the public to be able to make those comments and not have, or no, I have to make those comments at the beginning, or I can come in long as I'm in within that first hour and I will be able to still have my time if I'm able to get in. So those are my only comments. I just want us to be clear and transparent with the public how we're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to put a few caveats out there. I want to echo what Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy said in the sense that this is not a permanent thing. It could be, but we're trying this out. There were a lot of requests around how we do public comment. So we're trying something. And if it doesn't work, there's no thing for us to default to what we were doing before. If people come to find that thought it was better or do something different, right? So we're trying something. So to be flexible. But as far as raising your hands are concerned, I mean, that's going to still be the same, right? So, I mean, I'm going to message you and, you know, and give you a bunch of opportunities to raise your hand, you know, before it actually starts. But once it starts, it starts. So that is pretty much it. I want to remind people, though, as a matter of fact, you might as well start raising your hand right now. Just get in there. But I want to remind people that this is public comment for everything, okay? So it's kind of a free-for-all, right? So this is public comment on things that are on the agenda, not on the agenda. If you want to, you know, say something about the consent calendar, you know, or you want to pull an item, which our agenda says the public can do, this is your time to do it. It will not come back to you. So I don't want anybody to miss that. So we're gonna just wait. I'm gonna do a countdown. Um, Raise your hands. Um, but that said, we've had a little bit of discussion. We're gonna have a vote. Mr. Gonzalez Boy, I mean, I'm looking at you. Mr. Christian, you're first tonight.
Yes.
Gonzalez, so yes.
Reckler,
Reckler, no.
Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips, yes. And because we were suspending our bylaws, we actually had to have 4 people do this, and so it did pass. So that's it. We're gonna go on to public comment. Folks, please raise your hand. I'm gonna do the countdown. I'm gonna start even higher than I usually do. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Raise your hand. And remember, you could comment on anything that's on the agenda or not right now. I don't know what number I was on. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.5, 0.25, 0. All right, gone. So we got 20 people with their hands up.
Okay, I'm making note of where the last one is. Got it. All right. Our first public comment tonight will be Chris Roski. You may unmute.
Great, thank you. I wanted to say hello to the school board and welcome to Dr. Hurst. Welcome to our district. My name is Chris Roski. I've been a teacher in this district for 18 years. I have 2 students in the district, a 6th grader and an 8th grader. And tonight I want to talk about Valley View and its place on the rebuild prioritization list. In 2013, my oldest son was in kindergarten. And when we came to Valley View, there were blueprints on the wall of the cafeteria that showed us what the new school would look like. And when the political winds of the school board changed, here we are 8 years later and $10 million of taxpayer money later, and Valley View has still not been rebuilt. It's a temporary campus that's in portables that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for the district to rent. So for some reason, the school district has decided that the Valley View community doesn't deserve a real school and that a temporary campus of portables is good enough for our children. I think this is a terrible precedent and shouldn't be allowed because when the political winds change, that could happen at any of our schools. We all know that the reprioritization list, all the schools on there need to be rebuilt, but the question is, will the district complete the job once they've started it? Valley View right now is at the end of the rebuild prioritization list, but really it shouldn't be on the list at all because it's a school that's in the middle of the rebuild process. So I urge the board to reject the reprioritization list as it is, and I urge the district to immediately finish rebuilding Valley View Elementary. Thank you very much.
Our next public speaker is Karen Shebeck.
Sorry for the delay.
We can hear you.
Great. My name is Karen Shebeck. I'm commenting about action item 4, which is renaming Juan Crespi School. I support this community-based initiative to rename the school, and I'd like to encourage the generous members of WCCUSD's community to donate copies of Betty Reed Soskin's memoir, Sign My Name to Freedom, to the school to be available in its classroom and school-wide libraries. I've worked with Marcus Books in Oakland, and to order a book, people just need to call Marcus Books in Oakland at 510-652-2344 and let them know it's for a school. A volunteer will pick them up from Marcus Books and deliver them to the school. The book sells for $27. Let's do this to support the students and to support a historic local business. And regardless of the name change, it's a great book to have in their library. Store hours are 10 to 6, Monday through Saturday, noon to 4 on Sundays. If you get voicemail, leave a message and Blanche of Marcus Books will return your call. Thanks. Okay.
All right, our next public speaker is Katherine Simpson.
Unmute. Hello, everyone. I'm here with my student, and I have him ready to make a comment about action item construction of Richmond High School. I'm not too sure why is my video opened or no?
There's no video for public comment.
There's no video? I don't
No.
know how to do that. Okay, well, here he is. This is my student.
Hello and good evening, school members, school board members. I am a senior at Richmond High School and in the Media Academy. I am most happiest when I am outside and read and study outside. We need windows because we feel brainless. And the light of day helps us. Also, because there are no windows, we feel prisoned. In that way, it affects most of us in our schoolwork because we cannot get it done. In chemistry, we cannot have experiments because there are no windows for better ventilation. Please, school board members, approve of the school building with windows, please and thank you. As we students of Richmond High will improve our headspace. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Navarro.
Oswaldo Navarrete.
Navarrete. Thank you. Okay, I'm so sorry my video doesn't work, but at least you heard my student. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Our next public speaker is Delon Harrison.
Good evening, board. Hope everybody's doing well this evening. I would like for you guys to take a look at C2 on there with that transportation item. I think it's Michael's transportation. I'm very concerned about that, and I would like for you guys to discuss that because it's unclear to me why certain groups are getting transportation and others are not being provided the same thing. I'm concerned about that. Also, to what the other young man stated about windows, this is my second child going through Richmond High. We need windows. Can you guys put some windows over there? We need some windows. The children need windows. And I have another one at Lake, and we need to get Lake redone also. So can you guys please make these environments learning conducive for our children? These are, like the earlier speaker said, these are schools that have been on the list, and we need that. And also our Office of Equity, our Mr. brought it up, the Office for the Curriculums, that we're supposed to have culturally competent curriculums. Please make sure that is going to be coming out and parents have the information on what schools will be teaching it and how we can get information to support our students. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Don Gosney.
Thank you very much. I am just so disappointed with this new policy here of asking the public to speak without hearing the presentations, without knowing the details, without knowing the facts. Would we expect any board member to vote before the presentations? Of course we wouldn't. So why are you asking the public to speak without knowing any of the details of the presentations? And let's say that I might have 6 different items that I want to speak on. Well, before I would get 90 seconds for each of the 6 items, but now you're telling me, oh no, combine them all, and 20 seconds apiece. We're not listening anyways, so what does it matter? Okay, but I mean, I hope you reverse this. I hope you see the error of your ways here. But what I was planning to speak on was about the facilities master plan. When the bond program was first started, there were problems when elected board members actually listened to their constituents when it came to which schools should be rebuilt and how fancy they needed to be. After significant issues with cost overruns and change orders, members of the public eventually said that enough was enough. In 2015, after nearly 100 meetings with members of the community, the teachers, and even the students, the facilities master plan was developed. The beauty of this plan, with the included rankings of the schools, was that it was data-driven. It took the politics out of the mix. But that was then, and this is now. The ranking list that will be brought before you tonight smacks of politics. This is not the list that was brought before the facilities committee by staff. This was an alternative list put forth by the facilities committee. Sadly, some of the changes promoted by the committee come across to the community as if they were personal choices of the committee members that were not backed up by the data. When it comes to taxpayer funds, the funds that many of us will be paying for the next 40 years if we live long enough, these decisions have to be made after considering what's best for the district as a whole and not necessarily what's best for any given elected member of the Board of Election. I have a lot more to say, but guess what? Yeah, you shut me down.
Our next public speaker is Joanna Pace.
Good evening, board. I speak to you tonight with several hats on. First, as a member of Public Core, which advocates on behalf of transparency and accountability. We commend you for trying to do things that make the meetings more accessible. We know that meetings that last till late into the night are not accessible to your average, particular average parent. So we commend you for trying to do things that might make the meeting shorter. We do want to suggest that there are other ways that the meeting can be made more concise, and certainly to revisit this decision after you've experienced it for a few meetings. And one of our questions, one of our suggestions for this method would be that if indeed the idea is to make it more accessible for people, then to guarantee that the hour is starts always at the same time every meeting, then it'll make it easier for parents who are juggling dinner and homework and stuff to be able to share, because they know exactly when it is that they need to call in and raise their hand. As the chair of the Education Committee of the El Cerrito NAACP, I recommend that you approve the suggested change of Crespi Middle School to Betty Soskin Middle School. And as a former sixth grade teacher, I want to highlight that this change was advocated for by students and student-led suggestion, and we commend those students. And I think it's a great thing that you can honor this request of the students. Good luck with trying to keep the meeting concise. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Next speaker is Katie Brohan.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good evening, everyone. It feels a little bit meta to be making public comment about public comment, but I did want to say from an equity perspective, I really appreciate the change to move some public comment to the beginning of the meetings, as not all families can stay on calls till 1 o'clock in the morning. And for those who just need to speak their piece and go attend to other matters, be it work or family, I really do appreciate it. But echoing what some other commenters, board members have said, I would also encourage the board to take not an either or perspective and offer perhaps a slightly shorter open session like this one at the beginning, but then also allow public comment in reference to specific items as they come up, as I think many on this call would agree that we sometimes need to hear things first, see presentations, learn about decisions before we can solidify our own comment position on those things. A lot of important conversations among the board were had over this past year, and public comments that occurred were an important part of those conversations. So I just encourage the board as they move forward with the decision to consider actually going with both ideas instead of having to choose just one. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is Sandra Mulhern.
Hi, I'm a parent at Valley View Elementary. I also served on the prioritization committee. I'm upset about the FMP update of the 19 priority sites being presented here today. The prioritization committee was tasked with updating criteria for the 19 priority school sites, not criteria to evaluate all WCCUSD school sites. The facilities committee took the list of priorities selected by the prioritization committee and eliminated 6 of the 14 recommended criteria from being applied to the 19 priority sites, including schools using temporary housing or portables, lack of technology, ADA compliance, lack of cover or enclosed walkways, enrollment projections. At the last prioritization committee meeting, Mrs. Mia Cooper stated they wanted additional community input to rank criteria. She stressed the need to involve the broader community as much as possible and stated that the plan was to bring that back to the prioritization committee. None of this happened. This ended up being our last meeting. And the criteria were discussed at the following facilities committee meeting. The discussion led by President Phillips ended up pushing the 6 criteria off the list for the 19 sites. Ms. Mia Cooper suggested bringing these back to the prioritization committee, but President Phillips dismissed the need to get any input from the community or the prioritization committee after the facilities committee had just made substantial changes to the list of criteria. The facilities committee stated these 6 criteria would instead be applied to all school sites. However, where the broader evaluation of all school sites is not reflected in today's presentation, these criteria are still issues that should be considered for the 19 school sites. Applying any criteria to all school sites was never discussed and never part of the prioritization committee's mission. Elimination of these criteria has a huge effect on the facilities master's plan math and ultimately the health and safety of students and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is Amir Rashad.
Greetings. My name is Amir Rashad. I'm also known as Quentin Youngblood. I'm a former basketball Gaucho Hall of Fame person, and I was hired in 2019 as the basketball coach for Instructional High School. And just to cut things short, I only have 2 minutes. I was wrongfully terminated. There were several things from the at-will agreement, several procedures that was not done. I'm asking for the board to hear my case, for me to get reinstated so I can actually present to the board in a comprehensive way all of the things that wasn't in place that allowed me to be wrongfully terminated. I was only given hired in 2019 July, really only allowed to coach September, and then February COVID hit. There was a whole year and 3 months, and then after another month I was terminated for no reason. I actually learned of my termination from another coach, and there was a secret hire that I didn't even know. I was not informed by the principal. So it's so many things. I have a lot of parent support. We've written letters to the superintendent and so on and so forth. I'm not trying to cause a lot of issues, but I would like my thing to be heard. I'm the first Gaucho in 25 years to actually be a head coach, and I don't know why I was cut short after 8 months of service. So I would like to do that. My email is there. Please give me an email to give me a private interview if it's.
Our next public speaker is Lisa DeCastro.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a parent of 2 students at Valley View Elementary. Valley View is a diverse and vibrant school community that not only serves our neighborhood kids, but approximately 50% of our student body are transfer kids from all over the district. I want to strongly encourage the board to vote no on the proposed list of 19 sites to be rebuilt. The prioritization committee has done so much work, and their recommendations for more community feedback have virtually been ignored by the facilities committee. $5.5 million have already been spent on starting Valley View's rebuild, and our students and teachers have been waiting in portables for 5 years. You know, I ask my own kids to start a job and finish it to the end, and that's what I'm asking our district to do. Show accountability and finish the Valley View rebuild. While it's great to now have heat and air, our temporary campus still poses safety concerns. We have uncovered walkways and flooding during the rainy season. There are no indoor walkways during smoke days. We are susceptible to vandalism because of the design of our temporary campus, and traffic dangers are many in our parking. If our district is truly committed to all students, I'd like you to reconsider the priority listing of sites recommended tonight and vote no. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Andrew Wilkie.
Yeah, hi everybody. This is Mr. Wilkie from Richmond High School. I'm the music director at Richmond High. I'm speaking about the Measure R funding. I wanted to point out an important fact that I don't think a lot of people know in terms of age. The music building at Richmond High School, I was able to find pictures of it in our 1954 yearbook. So while the rest of the school was rebuilt in 1970, the music building was rebuilt in the 50s. So this district has spent countless amounts of dollars trying to get that building up to code, as I've been in that room for the past 7 years and have spent much of my time reporting stuff and trying to get follow-up done. So at my school, well, first of all, every other high school music department has 2 rehearsal spaces. We have 1. I have 3 separate music programs at Richmond High. I have a marching band and a band program. There's 75 kids in the marching band. So when I have 75 kids trying to change, get ready for an event, there's not enough space. I also have an orchestra and a music production class. My school's the only school with the music production program. We're also the only high school, except for Kennedy, without music production facilities. So the new rebuilds have facilities for music productions, but don't offer the courses, whereas we offer the course, but don't have the facilities. So something people forget about with music and stuff is storage. I have an abandoned inventory of several hundred instruments. I have an orchestra inventory of about 100 instruments, and then I have about 80 uniforms. That doesn't include the drums that take up huge amounts of space. We need space in that building. Kennedy also needs to be rebuilt. There's no reason you can't do a piece here, a piece there at the same time. You could rebuild them both. We passed the funds. Our students from Richmond High made videos that were on the news trying to get voters to pass these funds. So please reconsider the prioritization list.
Our next public speaker is Elora Henderson.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent Hurst, and district leaders. Elora Henderson with Public Advocates, commenting on action item 2 and 3, the LCAP and budget adoption. We first wanted to appreciate staff Lynn Potter and Marin Trujillo for updating the LCAP in response to our comments. First, the increased and improved services section now includes much stronger descriptions of how each action supports high-need students and how the district plans to measure the effectiveness of those actions. Additionally, the current LCAP now reflects the full $57 million from the supplemental and concentration funds to support increase and improved services. It will be critical moving forward to monitor these actions for effectiveness, including collecting and reporting on relevant data in partnership with students and families. Next, we appreciate that the budget overview for parents is now attached to the LCAP. However, as the second chart shows, less than 20% of the district budget is included in the LCAP. We hope to continue to partner with the district in the future to increase the amount of the total budget in the LCAP and develop additional tools for public engagement with the budget. With regard to the annual update, we appreciate the district's efforts to provide a more thorough outline of the additional actions and plan requirements, especially the $50 million in supplemental and concentration funding, which had been missing in the prior draft. This now includes a description of some of the major differences in budgeted and actual spending, including $11 million that has not yet been accounted for. We are looking forward to gaining a comprehensive understanding of the additional actions when the books are closed in the fall. Finally, we and our partner Healthy Richmond noticed that there are some changes in the final LCAP language from what had been reported on the DLCAP's responses, including around revisiting of board policies and expansion of community schools. We look forward to connecting to understand the reasoning behind these changes. Public advocates and our partners advocated for a multi-billion-dollar investment in community schools in the state budget. and we and our partners hope to work with WCCUSD to expand opportunities for racially just and relationship-centered community schools our students deserve in the coming years. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Elizabeth Smith.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Smith. I'm a parent of 4 children in the district. My oldest child is 16 and all of my children have gone to Valley View. I'm a Valley View parent. And when my 16-year-old was in kindergarten, we were promised a school. We have spent tons of money, time, energy, promoting, getting our school rebuilt. And it is ludicrous that we are still fighting for this after 10 plus years. It's disappointing because we have now been told twice that what we were promised, we will not be given. So how are we supposed to trust the district and how are we supposed to feel confidence in the board if what we are being told is going to be brushed aside the next time the topic comes up? Our Valley View parents are a strong community. We are diverse, we are exceptional, and we are very vocal, as you may be able to tell from tonight. And we really need to be listened to. Another thing that Valley View families do is we vote. And that's something to remember. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Jose De Leon.
Good afternoon, school board, Dr. Hirsch. First of all, I'd like to thank all the students that are in person during summer school. It feels really good and the campuses feel alive with the students walking through the hallways. So thank you again for all the work that the teachers, the staff, under the leadership of the principals and administrators have done to bring that life of summer school and students back into the campuses. We urge that we continue communicating with the community about the plans for the fall. I think it's very important that our community understands that the goal is for everyone to come in person so that we can continue pushing on students being vaccinated in order to feel safe on campus. Additionally, I'd like to thank Dr. Hurst and his team for being thoughtful for the planning for the beginning of the year, giving the sites a week to prepare for the students to make sure that we cover any changes in curriculum and any support that students may need when they come back. We are looking towards coming back in a restorative manner to make sure that we're both addressing the academic and the social needs of the students. I want to change my hat a little bit. As principal at Richmond High, I've been hearing from a lot of our students for many years about the feeling of the campus, of being confined, of being felt like a detention space rather than a school. So any work that can be done towards changing the school in order to better serve our community. We have seen some successes of the new schools when they're reopened. And
Mr. De Leon,
thank you.
Students are part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is Maisha Harris-Gash.
Good evening, Maisha Harris-Gash, Kennedy High School teacher, Kennedy High School graduate. So first, I'm not in agreement with the public comment being at the beginning, so I'll just kind of ditto what other community members have voiced why they don't like the public comment at the beginning. Second thing, Great about the renaming of Crespi. I was on the two meetings that was had. I still want to give love to the student who represented them at both meetings. Miss Anaya, she did wonderful and great. Let's continue to encourage her. I do like the idea about the district supporting the purchase of Miss Soskin's memoir. I would add to the list, we have a local Black business store. It is called Multicultural Store and Gifts. It is at 260 Broadway in Richmond. So yes, it's great to, I've been to Marcus Books many a time myself, but also let's support our local in our backyard, in our district, Black business as well with that bookstore. The third thing, I saw the agreement with Illuminated Collective, and I was looking at the scope of what their work is going to be. It is just my hope that this is not going to be something that we check the box, we spend this time, we spend this money, and then there is no significant change that we see within the system. Next, Kennedy High School, quit committing a theft against my alma mater, my students, my community. Millions of dollars of Kennedy's money from over 10 years ago, because Kennedy should have been built over 10 years ago. I was a teacher at Pinot Valley when Pinot Valley was in the very beginning stages of the process of developing the plan to rebuild it. So Kennedy's been on the list for a long time. So quit taking money from Kennedy. It is like a theft. I cannot stand it. I cannot take it. And then I would end on even another positive note. I enjoy summer school. It's great to have the young people in the building. I think that they are having a good time also being in the building. And I'm going to end again with take care, Kennedy, quit being piecemeal, take care of my alma mater.
Our next public speaker is Angelica.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Angelica Flores. I hope everyone is well. I am a student at Richmond High, and I am the chairman in my school site council and a student trustee in the district and the drum major in the Richmond High marching band. As an advocate for the students in Richmond High, I'm here to talk about how important it is for Richmond High to be rebuilt. You see, school is supposed to feel like a welcoming place and not a prison. Do students in the Richmond community not matter? I don't think any student deserves to be walking in an old building with stained walls and rats running around the halls. We deserve a nice building just like Pinot, Hercules, and El Cerrito. We deserve sunlight. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Teresa Hardy. You may unmute.
Hello, I am a parent of 3 Valley View students. I'm here to support the rebuild. I have my eldest son who just was promoted to 7th grade. He actually spent from 2nd grade to 6th grade in a portable. One of the concerns that I have is that we lose families to other districts. We lose families to private schools because the portables are not ideal, especially during this pandemic. We didn't have enough space to socially distance for a large number of in-person students. That affected, what our principal and our staff could offer. I have 2 other children at Valley View, and I want to see them have a real school that's safe, promotes learning, and shows that we value our kids and the environment they thrive in. We're a little school, but we're a mighty school. Please rebuild Valley View. Our families want to continue to support public education, and delays like this is what turns people off. I also want to offer that this is an odd setup. I know that it's new, but I hope that we can work on a better compromise for public comments. My son, who's in 7th grade, is going to Crespi, former Crespi, as our hope, and will be the Soskin school. We definitely support that. I think that is a wonderful way to support a local hero. I also want to say that all of these schools deserve care and consideration. As a Valley View parent fighting for rebuild, I really don't like continuing to feel like we're competing against others. I want Richmond High to have windows. I want us to have a school. I want Kennedy to have a rebuild. These things are important. We can find the money and we can find the will. Thank you.
Thank you. The last hand that was up is Cray Charles. I believe this might be Miss Scotty.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, it is me. It's Scotty Smith. I wanted to comment on the consent calendar C2. item in terms of the Mandarin School and the provision of transportation from the homes to their new location. This is a district that has open enrollment, and we have many students who transfer to particular schools for a specialty program, just like the immersion program, and the district has not provided transportation for them. And I'm speaking about equity here. If you're going to provide that for one school, then all students who choose to transfer to another school because of a program that is being offered has to have that same offer. But under the ed code, in terms of open enrollment, we have not, I don't see anything in particular at this time versus what happened during NCLB that would warrant paying for the Mandarin School. And if you're going to do that, you may as well pay for all students who have to transfer to other schools because of a specialty program or for reasons that they're leaving a low performing school. This is not equity when you do this. And I think the district really need to take into consideration what we are saying and doing when we set up a system whereby parents have a choice to go anywhere they want to go. That we're going to pay for some schools, for some kids to go to a specific location and not pay for all of the students that go to other locations. Thank you.
That was the last hand that was up when we started public comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wald. That does conclude public comment. We are now going to go on to item B7, which is agenda review and adoption. Board, are there any are there any items that anyone would like to take off consent? Okay, I see two hands. Let me change my view so I can see everybody. I'll just start with Trustee Christian and go through. Mr. Christian, anything you'd like to take off the consent calendar?
No.
Okay. Mr. Gonzalez, boy.
Thank you, President Phelps. I would like to pull C2.
So is it C2 or is it a particular contract in C2?
Thank you for asking a clarification. It's the contract with Michael's Transportation Services.
Okay, got it. Mrs. Reckler?
Yes, I'd like to pull C19 equity analysis contract between WCCUSD and Illuminated Collective.
Okay. And Mrs. Smith Falls.
Trustee Gonzalez Hoy pulled the one I was asking about.
Okay, so I have C2, specifically Michael's Transportation Service, Inc. And I have C19, which is Equity Analysis Contract. Okay, we already have public comment, so we're not doing that now like we usually do. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve this agenda with two changes. One is Michael's Transportation Service Inc. contract being pulled, which is in C2, not the entire item, and C19, which is the equity analysis contract. And then you also know, just keep in mind that we're going to go back into closed session, that we had only recessed closed session. Can I have a motion for that, please?
I'll move that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Reckler. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved by Reckler and seconded by Gonzalez Floyd. Mr. Christian, can you please start the vote?
Yep.
Please.
Yes, Christian, yes. Gonzalez Hoy, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips, yes. Thank you, everybody.
President Phillips.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
do have a point of order. I think we missed the minutes on B8.
That's after agenda review and adoption, so that's
Great.
in there.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Now we're here.
All right, so we're on B8, which is approval of minutes for June 1, June 2, and June 9. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes for those dates? Reckler?
I'll move. I have a couple of slight corrections.
Okay.
A second.
You know, and I said that. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Way I said that differently than I usually do, so I threw everybody off. Board members, do you have any corrections to the minutes? Okay, Reckler, what are your corrections?
I apologize. Hang out just a minute.
No problem.
And I'm going to email them in too. For June 2nd, item B1, which is the bond sale, it seems that there's a half sentence there. And so the replacement sentence would be that I spoke about my uncertainty at the importance of seeing a revised facilities master plan, thumbnail sketch of how much projects might cost, and potential timeline prior to the sale of bonds. And then for June 9th, F2 on the budget and FICMAT, talking about the district not being in good health. What I prefer it said is that I remarked that financially the district was not in a good place, and saying that I was open to having a conversation about outside assistance, but added that there was a substantial amount that could be done in-house because FICMAT gave us a report that outlined what needed to be done. And if that's approved, I'll email.
So can I have a motion to approve the minutes with the changes that Trustee Reckler just said, and which she will also email to staff?
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it was moved by Gonzalez Hoy and seconded by Christian. On to the vote, Mr. Christian?
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, oh yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips, yes. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to move on to item C, which is our consent items. The only items that were pulled was Michael's Transportation Service, Inc., and that's in item C2. And I shouldn't say item. Michael's Transportation Service, Inc. is a contract in item C2. And then equity analysis contract, which is C19. So can I please have a motion to approve all of the items on consent with the exception of Michael's Transportation Service and the equity analysis contract?
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it was moved by Gonzalez Hoy and seconded by Christian. We are going to move on to the vote. Mr. Christian?
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, oh yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips, yes. Thank you so much, board. We are now going to move on to board, committee, and superintendent communication. Board, I sent out an email. I'm asking all board members to limit their presentation to a maximum of 5 minutes. And we will begin with the academic committee.
Good evening, everyone. On May 10th, the academic committee talked about the race and equity work started in the district. This work was not only spearheaded by district leadership, but also consultants. The leading question in this work was, what does WCCUSD do to create the conditions for Black and Brown children and leaders to move beyond fighting to be fighting for survival? They had 6 recommendations that came to the academic committee. I would like to take a minute to read those recommendations. Sorry about that. These are the recommendations that we are bringing forth tonight. Number 1, issue a formal, clearly articulated public commitment to WCCUSD as an actively anti-racist organization. Number 2, systematic alignment across the district, every employee, all levels, to disrupt anti-Black racist behaviors. Number 3, expand investments and accountability metrics to transition site leaders and central office positions to actively anti-racist leadership roles. Number 4, expand investment in equity leaders to include ongoing professional development. Number 5, expand support systems to help Black and Brown students, employees, and community members to navigate ongoing racist violences. And number 6, interrogate, identify, and dismantle racist policies within WCCUSD, including but not limited to hiring, placement, evaluation, labor practices, curriculum, teaching, school infrastructure disparities, overt and covert school-based racist attacks, and many more. Those were the 6 recommendations that were brought forth by the race and equity consultants that was hired by the district, and they were brought forth to the academic committee again on May 10th. I am bringing those recommendations forward to the board tonight, that those 6 things are what we need to actively work on with our district leadership and have all of those protocols and policies and procedures and practices brought back to the board so we can look at and then implement. Thank you, President Phillips.
Thank you very much for your presentation, ma'am. You probably has it, but if you could email that to the superintendent so we can figure out how to agendize it for discussion, that would be fantastic.
Email will be sent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the budget committee.
We haven't met, so we don't have anything to talk about. Thank you.
That's true. All right, next is the charter committee.
Thank you, President Phillips. I'll be quick. Our committee.
Trustee Gonzalez Hoy, you're breaking up. Is that just on my end, President Phillips, or is he breaking up on your end too?
It's over here too. Mr. Gonzalez Hoy, if you want to wait a second.
Reviewing the sorry, am I freezing? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're breaking up, Trustee Gonzalez Hoy. We can't hear you.
Mr. Gonzalez Hoy, when you unfreeze, what we're going to do is we're going to go, because you might be able to hear me still. We're going to go to the next one, and then we'll come back to you so you're able to do your presentation. The next one actually would be facilities. Most of what we have been talking about in facilities is actually on the agenda for tonight, so I'll reserve my comments until later on in the meeting. And then next is the safety committee.
Yes, there's no update. We have not had a chance to meet within the month of June.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hurst.
President Phillips, Trustee Gonzalez Hoy is back.
Mr. Gonzalez Hoy, you there?
Thank you. Yes, I apologize. Of course, my internet went out as soon as I started speaking. I am very sorry to everyone. Very quick report from the Charter Committee. Trustee Reckler and I and our staff finally finished reviewing the charter policy for our district, which encompasses quite a bit. It took us 4 months to get to this point, which I'm very proud of the work that we did. It's going to be on the agenda for the 14th. The idea is that we're gonna do a presentation alongside with Dr. Wold, his staff, and our lawyers. And we're gonna be bringing the recommendation to the full board for the new policy for the district. We're gonna send it out to the public and the board for review ahead of time because it is a very meaty policy. So we hope that everybody has a chance to read it and review it prior to the 14th. But I'm very excited to bring that forward to you all. And I just want to thank Trustee Reckler for supporting that work with me the last few months. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, boy, you don't want a special meeting.
Oh, yeah, thank you, President Phillips. We talked about it with Dr. Hurst, and we decided that it wouldn't be necessary to do a special meeting. We can just put it within the board meeting on the 14th.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hirsch, your turn.
Thank you so much, President Phillips. Can we bring up the presentation for Superintendent's Report, please? Okay, I'll bring it up. Go ahead, Rochelle. Thank you very much. So we'd like to say good evening. And first, we'd like to start off by just celebrating the remaining graduations that I did not mention the last board meeting. So you can see on our picture, we have Kennedy High School who has graduated, Gateway, El Cerrito, and Vista. So as I did the last board meeting, I would like to say congratulations to the staff and to the leadership for getting our students to that point. So congratulations. Next slide. We also wanted to take the opportunity to recognize Denise Safeli, who's a business services coordinator. She's retiring after being with the district for 7 years and 9 months, and she's been with the business service department. We also like to share that Ms. Safeli started her career in our district as a confidential senior administrative assistant in the business department in 2014. She also held the business department together during the transition for 4 business service associate superintendents and numerous board members. We also like to recognize her that she received an award for being classified Employee of the Year in 2017 on May 10th. And she was recognized for her kindness, her compassion, and her professionalism. Her wealth of knowledge regarding areas about the school district is a valuable resource. And she's been an exemplary model of professionalism and support for our district stakeholders. In July 2020, she was promoted to the coordinator of charter school financials, where she created great connections and transparent communications between the district and charter schools. So we wanted to just take this opportunity to celebrate you, Ms. Denise Safeli, and to honor you for your hard work and dedication to WCCUSD. Congratulations on your retirement. Next slide. So I wanted to take the opportunity to speak about Illuminate Ed Collective. And this is a proposal that I'm recommending to the Board of Directors for consideration to assist me with the transition, becoming a new superintendent and really supporting our district to advance student learning and student achievement. Next slide. So what I wanted to share on this slide is certainly support is needed. As I look at the system, we certainly need to build capacity in several areas, including our human resources, but we also need to look at systems, structures, protocols, and policies. Next slide. So the question is, why do we need this support now? So as I was sharing, as I've shared with all of the stakeholders that I've talked to, we're really working in the absence of systems, and not just systems, but processes and protocols. And what I would want to share with the community and those who are listening is that we need this support. We need to look at our systems, our protocols and processes. We need to make sure that everything that we do reflect our values and our priorities. And we need to make sure that we're uncovering everything in every department in every area to see what our gaps are as well. So this support is significant at this time. Next slide. So the organization Illuminate Ed Collective really going to focus on 4 different areas. So first, the equity analysis. And I've been sharing this with all the stakeholders, and they're really looking at every department from human resources to operations to also finance and curriculum and instruction. It would even go down to the classroom level and look at academics and master scheduling processes, but also it will look at questions around access, student access, but also making sure that we have our students moving toward educational equity. One of the things I want to point out as well, there's been conversation about the executive summary and recommendations that's going to be presented to the board. And what will happen with this report? And will it be a report that's stagnant, that has no action? And I'll just share with you resoundingly no. We will actually act on everything within this report. And I will be at the front as the superintendent, leading the charge, which goes to the strategic planning process. So I'll be out front. So when the report comes out, the report will go to the board and it'll have 2 to 3 items that we're really going to focus on that will lead us in our strategic planning process. But it will also be a comprehensive report that covers every single department that I just shared and what we need to do to close those gaps. But when we look at the strategic planning process, again, this is a process that I'll be leading as a superintendent. So I'll be leading the conversations around our vision, and that it's a vision around instruction and a vision of equity. And really, where we want to be in 5 to 10 years from now, and taking a snapshot of our future. I'll also be leading the charge around the mission and really having questions where we're engaging in around the purpose and why do we exist. I'll also be leading the process around core values, and this is important work because it really defines how we treat one another, how we act, how we behave with one another, and how we talk to one another as well. And all of this will lead also to a community conversation around our graduate profile. And I know we have a graduate profile, but we will revisit that. And we'll ask ourselves the question, is this what we still want our students to know and be able to do? And we'll engage in that conversation with the general public. And again, I'll lead the charge as well as from all the conversations, all the data that rises to the top, from the equity analysis, what are the 2 to 3 goals that we're going to work on together as a learning community? And I've been very clear with everyone across the organization that we cannot focus on everything at one time. So we will establish 2 to 3 priority goals, and we will move forward together as a learning community. But I also wanted to share with you that we are going to have technical support. So this organization will not only give us the report, not only will assist me and support me in me leading the charge with the strategic planning process, but they'll continue to support us throughout the year, June 2022. Next slide. So I've talked about this and what the scope of work will be. And I covered all the areas. And again, I want to stress to you that when I was talking to the organization, I shared with them that we have input on what is covered. So if there's something that's in the scope of work we don't see and we want them to be involved in that process, then that will happen. But again, looking at this, they'll look at our curriculum instruction practices, communication with stakeholders, student scheduling, the master scheduling process, professional learning, human resources, finance, and budget. This analysis will also include, as I said before, a review of our policies, our practices and procedures, and our systems. And again, we'll be looking at our gaps. One of the things I failed to mention on the other page that we will have as well as a result of this is a scorecard. or a metrics. So it's really important that we're reporting out our progress on our goals on a regular basis. And that may mean every quarter. That information is going out to internal stakeholders and it's going out to external stakeholders. So that is important. Next slide. And then why Illuminate Ed Collective? So looking at this organization, they do have a proven track record. They do have skilled personnel in Illuminate Ed that can go deep into our finances and our budget, that can go deep into human resources and operations and curriculum and instruction. So all those important areas that I shared with you before. And they do have a level of expertise. Next slide. And a timeline. So if approved by the board trustees, it will begin immediately, beginning tomorrow. And then it will continue the work in supporting me, but also begin the equity analysis immediately, but also prepping for that presentation to the board. And we have my first 100 days I share with the board. By October, we'll be making that presentation to the board. Here are our gaps. Here are our recommendations. And then we'll take that information and we'll immediately begin the strategic planning process, which I share with you. And I'll share it again, that I'll be leading that charge around the mission, the vision, and core values. We're really looking at instruction as well. And then that support will continue with the superintendent through June the 30th, 2022. Next slide. Next slide. So that's the first part of superintendent's presentation, but I also wanted to report out on summer school participation and just let you know what our attendance has been for ESY or extended school year, students with exceptional needs, and then our non-ESY students as well. So you can see our ESY for elementary is 251, non-ESY, 1,785 for a total of 22,036. K through 8 ESY is 22, 408 non-ESY for a total of 430. Middle school ESY 34, non-ESY 430 for a total of 464. Then high school ESY 83, non-ESY 1,555 for a total of 1,638. And then transition students ESY 61. So we have a total in summer school of 4,629. We just wanted to report out on that as well. Next slide. Also wanted to recap fall reentry planning. And again, I said that I would be out front of this, leading this charge as well as the superintendent. So I wanted to be very clear, as I have been in every meeting that I've been in, and also in the last board meeting, that the board led a charge and they shared a statement that the district will reopen for 100% in-person learning this fall. And I've been communicating that message clearly to every single stakeholder that I've talked to. And I've talked to many people and also our leaders as well. So we wanted to just be very clear to everyone that that is the expectation. That's the charge that has been given to me as the superintendent. That's what we're going to do. Next slide. Also, I wanted to share with you that we have made sure that we looked at a distributive leadership model. So making sure that we have a number of people who are involved in the process. And we still continue to look for ways to get multiple people involved. And I'll talk about that in a second. Next slide. One of the things I shared is our COVID situation certainly has changed. COVID positivity and case rates at some of the lowest levels since the pandemic began. And I wanted to share with you that for vaccines, 60.57% of the population has been fully vaccinated locally. And also to share with you that people 12 and up are eligible for vaccines. And we also have free clinics, and we'll also have clinics set up for the first week of school as well. Next slide. We're going to continue our mitigation strategies as we enter into the fall. And I've been sharing this with parent groups, but also our leaders, that it's going to be important that we still focus on social distancing, hygiene, coughing etiquette as well, ventilation in our classroom and filtration systems, quarantining and isolation. We'll be required to wear a mask, and we'll be able to share that with our parents as well. It'll look a little different for being outside, for outside activities. We'll also have other mitigation strategies, such as avoid touching the face. Next slide. And we've tried to be very clear as well with the community about our timeline and getting this information out. I've shared with you that we are meeting weekly in 3 basic groups, and I'll highlight those in a second. But every week, starting last week, we're meeting. This week, next week, and then you'll see all the way up through July 19th. We're planning in those groups, we're soliciting your feedback, and then all the slides will come up to me, to the team, and we will actually produce a slide set that will go out to the public for July the 19th. And school starts August the 16th. Next slide. So very quickly, I want to just share with you our groups, and if you can go to the next slide. We have an instructional core group, and their group has really been focusing on what's happening inside the classroom. They did have their first meeting, and the real focus has been what is it going to look differently for our students coming back and for our adults, and what will professional learning look like for our adults as well. There's been a big conversation around social emotional learning and really how to support our students coming back and what their needs will be. And really the conversation has been around adults as well. That group is being facilitated by our own Gabe Chilcott. Next slide. We also have Operations Committee. They had their first meeting last week, and they've been focusing on, as I shared with you, what will our cleaning protocols be? What will social distancing look like and masking? Safe staffing and facilities, and COVID safety as well. And that's being facilitated by our own Julio Franco. Next slide. Our community engagement group is really responsible for ensuring that we have feedback from all stakeholders, internal and external, but really also sharing the progress. And that's been facilitated by our own Rochelle Forrest. Next slide. And then you have the steering committee. In the steering committee, I'm leading that group. All the information coming from those 3 groups are coming up to the steering committee, and we'll be putting all this information together and sending it out to the public with the final result, as I shared, on July the 16th. Notes, can you open up that notes, Rochelle? So I just want to share, if you can go to page 2. So I want to share this piece. So this is what our notes will look like. And actually our notes will be going out this evening, and they're scheduled to go out at 6:30. And the notes cover what has been happening in the meeting, so you can read those. And I just gave you a quick summary. But one of the things I want to call your attention to, when you open up the notes, you'll see a scan, a bar scan in the top left-hand corner. And if you click on that, you'll be able to go to a page where parents, community members, teachers, students are allowed to give feedback. So this is one way where we can get your feedback on what we need to look at in each one of those groups, whether it's the operational group, the instructional core group with social and emotional learning, or our communication and engagement group. So we just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. And again, we are planning meetings beginning next week. I had one meeting that was just a progress update last week. But we're going to look at trustee area, and we're going to be facilitating conversations with all our parents and community members on looking at our needs for our students around operations and in the classroom. And again, look for more information coming to you about those meetings by trustee area. Next slide. And then finally, in my superintendent report, just wanted everyone to be aware of the vaccine clinics that set up still at Kennedy High School, De Anza, and Helms Middle School. And then we have the redistricting commission meeting, Tuesday, June the 29th, a non-work day for our staff on July the 2nd, holiday, July 5th, agenda setting meeting, July the 6th, board retreat, July the 10th, our board meeting, July 14th, and then extended learning graduation, Richmond High School, July 15th. Thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Thank you, Dr. Hurst, for that report. We're going to go to questions if board members have them, but I want to just put two notes out there, one for the public. In this meeting, if board members are not asking as many questions as you're accustomed to us asking, it's not because we're not engaged or because we are not doing our homework. It is actually the opposite. Dr. Hurst has put in place some new systems to help us in these meetings. And so he and other staff are essentially meeting with board members in pairs prior to the meetings and allowing board members to ask really whatever questions they have and then to answer those questions prior to the meeting. So please know that if you don't hear as many questions from people, it's not because they're not doing their homework. It's because they are doing their homework and they're working very diligently to prepare themselves for the meetings. So that's the first thing I want to put out. The second thing that I want to put out before we begin, also because we are doing all of this pre-work now that was not happening before, I am asking board members to limit their questions to a maximum of 4 questions per item. A maximum of 4 questions per item. So that said, on the reports, Mr. Christian, any questions, sir?
No questions.
Mr. Gonzalez-Way?
Thank you. I don't have any questions.
Mrs. Reckler?
I do have one question, and that is for the viewing audience. Dr. Hurst, would you be able to differentiate between ESY and non-ESY in the summer school so that people are clear?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So ESY, first of all, is extended school year, and that's for our students with exceptional needs or our special needs students or special ed students. And then we have regular summer school as well, which is our non-ESY or non-extended school year. So I just wanted to just share that with everyone.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Smith-Folds, questions?
Dr. Hurst, is the number of 4,000, is that similar to the spring numbers? Are we averaging around the same that we did in spring?
I can find out about the spring. I don't want to say 100% sure, but I can get that for you right away.
Okay,
You know.
and then thank you for that. And then could I also get the demographic breakdown of those students attending summer school? Both the
Absolutely.
ESY and the non-ESY. Thank you.
No problem.
And then on slide 20, in the notes part that Ms. Forrest clicked on, so we saw page 1. Page 1 just had like the basic information. Can you tell me what page 2, 3, and 4 were? Just a summary of what they were. I don't want to have to make up a name to go through it, but just what's page 2, 3, and 4?
Absolutely. So each page is broken down by group. So all the community and parents will be able to look at the notes that were captured for the operational cadre group or for the instructional core social emotional group, and then also for the communication and stakeholder engagement group. So as I said, they've been meeting starting last week, and those pages just represent everything that was talked about in those meetings. And then also on each top left-hand corner of each page, those parents can click on that and write feedback for each one of those groups. And then we get that feedback to that group.
Okay, so parents have the opportunity, parents and community members, students, everyone has the opportunity to go to each page to see how each part of the system is working, and then to make comments on that, to read a summary and make comments. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then when you talked about having meeting in trustee areas, who all are you thinking to be invited to those meetings? Are you going to are you going to reach out to city leadership? Are you going to reach out to, of course, the board members that are in that area? And
Yeah, that's a good question. So the communication team and I are saying that, but what I would like to see is really by trustee area, everyone that's in that area is invited. So we're doing a virtual meeting. So it's really about getting the word out to everyone. So civic leaders, parents, business partners, students, they can all join the Zoom meeting. And it's really an opportunity for them to engage with me and just ask questions by trustee area about what's happening in all those areas. And then I'll be able to respond.
okay, so it's a town hall type of thing. People
Yes.
ask questions and you respond right there on the spot to the questions that are asked. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith-Folds. We are now done with the committee and superintendent communications.
President Phillips, point of order, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any way that we could have just a little discussion so I could honor Ms. Safelli? Did you
Say
hear
it
me?
again. You want to have a discussion about Ms. Safelli?
Yeah, so we could just honor her.
I guess theoretically, there's no discussion, there's no motion or anything like that. I think we're moving through things pretty quickly. Would it be okay if we did that in our comments?
Yeah, that would be okay.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Reckler.
President Phillips, before you go on, since we are moving quickly, would you add a break in there somewhere since we're progressing along? Not now, I'm just saying, just put it on your radar.
If we can.
Thank you, sir.
We're gonna go on to item E, our action items, which is the first one is on here is E1. It's Measure R, but I'm just gonna take a point of privilege and I'm gonna move renaming Juan Crespi Middle School up to we're gonna do that one first because there's some kids here who are waiting. And so that's where we're gonna start. Mr. Gonzalez, are you leading this or Dr. Hurst, who's leading this?
Yes, I'm starting it and I'm passing it to Dr. Hurst and
okay. Okay.
Thank you for moving it, by the way. So just for a quick summary for the public, the name change for the school was requested by the Crespi school community, including students, staff, and leadership from its African American Parent Advisory Committee and Parent Club. They were motivated by the social justice movement during the pandemic and began examining the school's namesake. As part of the effort, the school's history department designed a research project to investigate and research Juan Crespi, the California missions, and the impact on the indigenous people. Students share their findings with what is a name research project. And this also happened with the public. I would like to acknowledge and share the work by the Crespi community, including how they made a committee consisting of students, staff, and families the last couple of months to gather feedback. About a month ago, the school made a recommendation as part of the process to the Board of Education, which then triggered the creation of the renaming committee. The board appointed Trustee Smith-Folds, Superintendent Hurst, and I to hold 2 community meetings to gather further input and make a final recommendation back to the full board to approve and vote on, which we're doing tonight. Tonight, we bring you the recommendation that we rename Juan Crespi Middle School to Betty Reed Soskin Middle School after hearing from various stakeholders from the last few months, including students, staff, and families from last month. We felt this was the best choice for the school and community with utmost support. The committee also made the recommendation that in order to honor the Chochenyo community, the academic committee will work with staff and stakeholders in order to incorporate local Native American history into our curriculum. And we're going to do that work in the fall. As all of you know, Betty Reed Soskin is a world-renowned author, a national social and racial justice advocate, and the oldest U.S. park ranger assigned to the Rosita River World War II Homefront National Historical Park here in Richmond. On behalf of the committee, my hope is that we unanimously vote to accept this recommendation. I would like to thank the whole Betty Reed Soskin Middle School community for their work to make this happen. And specifically, I would like to give a shout out to student Anaya Sinod for being one of the main student leaders who led this charge, as well as Principal Flashman. And I'd like to thank all of you for assigning us. And I will pass it on to Trustee Smith-Folds and then Dr. Hurst to add a couple things.
Thank you so much, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy. It has truly been one of the honors of my life to be a part of this committee. And at our last meeting, we had the great pleasure and honor to have Ms. Betty Reed Soskin there herself with her daughter. And she is so happy that this is a possibility. She is very humbled and pleased to have a school named after her. Like Mr. Fleischman said at our last meeting, we need to give flowers to people while they are still able to be here and smell them. So it is a great honor and pleasure to be on this committee. And I too recommend Ms. Betty Reed Soskin as the name for the middle school formerly known as Juan Crespi. I want to thank Mr. Fleischman, and I also want to thank the student, Anaya. She is one to keep your eye out on. Watch her, watch how far she flies and how well she does and come back to this community. And she just has such a powerful voice. Again, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, thank you. And again, there's very few times in my life that I'm left speechless, and I was speechless in the presence of Ms. Soskin. So that's it. Thank you.
I just wanted to acknowledge,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry about that. I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work from our student Anaya, and just the hard work in putting together the presentation, but also in talking with Principal Fleischman, all the work that he did just to get the word out. And what I wanted to just share with everyone, when I asked the question of Mr. Fleischman, did we do everything that we could do to reach out? He said absolutely yes. And he shared that he went out on social media, posted on the district website, used Peace Jar, went to feeder schools as well, and also notified principals to get the word out as well. So in listening to him, I just wanted to acknowledge his efforts in getting the word out, but also our student Anaya as well.
Back to you, President Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board, do we have any questions for the committee? And I'm assuming that Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy will field most of the questions, but do we have any questions for Mr. Christian? No. Mrs. Reckler? Okay, I don't have any questions either. Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy, you want to make a motion?
It would be my honor. I would like to make a motion that we rename Juan Crespi Middle School to Betty Reed Soskin Middle School. I was gonna put a year, but that's it now.
Mrs. Smith.
I second that. I second.
Okay, so it's properly moved by Gonzalez-Hoy and seconded by Smith-Folds. Board, is there any discussion? Okay, I'm looking at people's faces. And I see none. I just want to very briefly say to Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy, thank you very much for taking this charge. Mrs. Smith-Folds, thank you very much for joining him. And to the Crespi, I'm saying Crespi because technically it's Crespi right now, but the Crespi community, thank you very much for thinking about this and going about this in a thoughtful way and making suggestions that actually honor people who have helped our community and not people who have hurt our community. So that's the only thing that I want to say. And with that, we can begin a vote. Mr. Christian?
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez-Hoy, yes.
I wanted to say that the Soskin Stars has a great ring to it, and I'm honored and humbled to vote yes.
Smith-Folds, yes.
Phillips, yes. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. Now we're going to go backwards to E1, which is approval of the prioritization for priority site sequencing of Measure R 2020. Approve the priority site sequence. That's item E1.
Yeah, so if you could elevate Mrs. Mejia Hooper tonight. She is going to give us the presentation on the prioritization and sequencing of Measure R projects for 2020. I believe she's here. You're muted, Ellen.
There we go. Good evening. Just making sure I have, let me share my screen here and we will be on our way. Everything shifts when you do that, which is so much fun. Thank you, board, for having us this evening. We are here on the update of the 2016 Facilities Master Plan, which is the prioritization of for the project sequencing of Measure R. Just as a place to start, we did bring the metrics, criteria, and weighting to the previous board meeting, and so it was adopted by the board there. But there's an acknowledgement that we do have 19 sites on the prioritization or the priority school list, all of which have major facilities needs. And so that is not a unknown fact. And so as we move through this process, we needed to come up with a way to be able to work through our facilities needs that are significant. And so the criteria and metrics and weight, like I said, was passed by the board at the previous meeting. And so now we have brought it back as we have looked to apply this metric to each one of the school sites. Various metrics had various applications. So the ones listed in pink show that the data from 2016 was just brought forward. So the same score that the school had in 2016 for that particular metric is the same score that it has today in this updated version. We also had criteria that are the same criteria and metric that was in the 2016 prioritization. However, we updated the scores for each school because there were changes that were made to those schools since 2016. So therefore, the metric data or score was updated, but the metric itself and the criteria stayed the same. One of those pieces is the unduplicated count, and the board actually passed the 1920 LCAP unduplicated count as the base. However, we had updated data for 2021. And so that is what we used within this scoring. The other change that was made for this one is, unfortunately, we have 3 programs that do not have an unduplicated count for LCAP because they're specialty programs. And so it was difficult to not provide a score for those schools. So we did try to keep with the spirit of the unduplicated count, and for the adult school, we use the students, the adult students that attend, whether they were English language learners or low income, that is self-reported when they enroll. So we use that as the percentage. And for Sarah, which is currently holding the Mandarin school, we used what the Mandarin school has as their unduplicated count. And for Cameron, which is our special ed early childhood development center, all of those students are identified as students of high need due to their, which is how they're in the special ed program as toddlers. And so we thought it was prudent to go ahead and give them all 10 points because these are high need students. And so that was the application of the 3 schools that did not have LCAP scores. Moving on, we had additional criteria that was established in the 2020 cycle that did not exist in 2016. So obviously the metrics, the data, the scoring was all new for those 3 criteria. So to be able to compare these different criteria that all have different number systems, we needed to break it down into a 10-point system for every metric. So this chart basically is that breakdown of how each school or each type of metric was translated into a 10-point scale.
And this is the priority site sequencing results based on that adopted criteria. So you'll notice that some of the scores, that each school has different colored bars. Each bar represents a criteria. You'll notice some of these bars are larger than 10 points. The reason for that is that there was different weighting that was established. So if it was a weight of 2, it was times by 2. If it was a weight of 3, it was times by 3. If it was a weight of 1, it was only out of 10. So that's how we got bigger bars and smaller bars. But overall, the scores worked out for Stage, Kennedy, Richmond, Highland, and Cameron and Grant to be towards the top. Now we took this priority result to the facilities committee, and at the facilities committee there was a recommendation passed by the facility committee to adjust the priority list, which elevated Kennedy and Richmond high schools to number 1 and 2, moving Stage down to number 3, and also moving Cameron, Alvarado, and Sarah to the bottom of the list to allow focus to be on the district K-12 facilities. And so beyond this piece, though, this is just one piece of the facilities master plan, and there are other components that still need to be considered beyond the priority list. And so to talk about this, Mr. Wold.
So one of the things that's changing is this year's budget cycle has one of the most significant investments in early education we have seen in California in the history of California education. There is a move to universal transitional kindergarten, as well as continue to expand the number of slots and spaces for students that are 3 and 4 year old. This is going to require the district and every school district in California to re-examine all of our facility utilization in every single elementary school. The reason for this is many elementary schools were designed and built back when kindergarten was not even full day. You would have 2 classes, 2 classrooms in a kindergarten building. The idea was that they would do AM and PM and you could serve 4 classes. Now we're in a situation where that same school might have 4 kindergarten classrooms, as well as a transitional kindergarten and a preschool, all needed to be housed. And the facility requirements for early education require different levels of bathrooms, higher square footage, different play areas for preschool and for kindergarten that require us to evaluate our ability to accommodate those programs as we phase them in over the next 3 to 4 years. The state will be doing, likely in 2022, 2 statewide bonds, one for facilities match for programs like Measure R, and a second bond we anticipate specifically for early education facilities because it will require modernization. We have already taken this into account in the one school that is in the design phase that is already moving forward, which is Lake, the rebuild. And we've made sure that Lake will have enough classrooms designed and ready to implement immediately when it is completed. But for those reasons, the district had actually recommended with the top 3 that 2 of the 3 were high schools that would not be impacted by this study. We know that all 3 are going to be our priorities that we would spend the next year working on gathering all of that information and understanding the needs of early childhood education, as well as the enrollment trends that impact our ability to run our elementary schools, and simultaneously move forward immediately with the 2 high schools that have similar needs and builds to go forth. In fact, after tonight, if the board does approve this list, the district will be selling the first Measure R series of bonds. We'll begin that process tomorrow to move us forward. I believe that's my next slide as well. And so we had presented this earlier, that part of our strategy is knowing that we will need to obtain significant funds to do all the projects and to do multiple projects in a quicker time frame. Our first sale would be for $75 million, with the idea that most of that would be paid off in the first 2 years from the proceeds of the Measure R. Since we last met with the board, inflation is already beginning to impact the market. The long-term rates have not changed, but the short-term rates are starting to ease upward. And the federal government has made a statement that there is an intent to raise interest rates within the end of the year. So us moving and getting the first sale is very important. We would then try to come back in March, between March and summer of 2023, with a larger sale of 225 million, which would give us a full project budget for our first wave of projects of 300 million for the two, out of the 575 million. So the district is already being very proactive in our planning and our financing to ensure that what we start, we finish.
So trying to wrap these pieces back together, tonight we're looking at the green boxes, which is the priority school rebuild for the full modernization projects. And we are looking to bring back to the board the idea of hiring an architect to do the site master plans for Kennedy and Richmond. And this will really allow us to understand the scope, scale, and budget, and also align these projects with the mission vision refresh that Dr. Hurst was referring to earlier, so that all of these components can be fully understood and the impacts to how much money will be required for these different projects can be more known. So that's one component of the options development piece. We also have district-wide initiatives that are currently going on. We are doing the HVAC study for the campuses that currently do not have air conditioning or mechanical ventilation. And so that report is coming out soon. They are visiting the last school sites next week. And so we will start getting the draft reports in for that. And in addition to that, we also have the student housing study. So beyond the kindergarten and early childhood development discussion that Dr. Wold had just moments ago, we also have schools that we know are underutilized. We also know that we have growth in some of the district areas. We also understand that we are utilizing portables at quite a few of our school sites. All of these things need to be brought together to shown in a whole picture, which will be included in the student housing study. All of those components come forward in the option development phase so that we can prioritize between these different boxes and figure out what the final projects are going to be in the implementation plan. So those are the next steps for completing the master plan. But tonight, staff recommendation is to consider the recommendations from the facilities committee and adopt the updated priority school sites list. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We're going to start with board questions. And Mr. Christian, do you have any questions, sir?
I have no questions.
Mr. Gonzalez-Floyd, do you have any questions, sir?
I do think you have 4, but they're quick. So, Mr. Freeze, thank you so much for the presentation. And Ms. Mejia Hooper, I appreciate the time. And Dr. Wald, sorry, I forgot you, Dr. Wald. Mr. Freeze, just for the public, how much money do we have available?
Measure R is $575 million, and there has been no drawdowns on that money. There are still funds within measures D and E, but those are allocated out and budgeted at this time.
Okay, and just for reference, how much did it cost to rebuild Pinole Valley High School?
The budget for Pinole Valley High, and we're not done yet, we're in the final phase, was $216 million.
Okay. And what was the cost of the average elementary school that we have rebuilt so far?
When you talk about average, what we can refer to is the most recent rebuild, which was Michelle Obama School. And that, I believe that budget on there was 45 million, maybe a tad bit higher without looking, but it was in the high 40s.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Freeze. My last question is actually for Dr. Hurst. Dr. Hurst, what would be your recommendation for us moving forward?
I would say, just looking at the facilities committee, one, it's been very clear. The top three are Kennedy, Richmond, and Stage. But I'm going to say that we should always look at the facilities committee and go with that recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hurst. President Phillips, that was my last question.
Thank you very much, sir. Mrs. Reckler?
Thank you. I do have some questions. So for Dr. Hurst, if you could, at the facilities meeting, which I partially attended because I was in and out, you made some comments that seemed to tie the strategic plan to facilities. Would you be able to recap that for me, please?
Absolutely. So what I shared is it's important that as we're going through the mission, vision, core values, refresh, and development process, that a conversation happens with all leaders, but especially our building principals, because anything that happens to our school, we need to keep in the forefront of our minds that this is like we're planning our vision, a 5 to 10 year process and what it will look like. So if we come up with an instructional vision and a vision around equity, our school facilities have to match that vision. So it's really important, whatever happens with any of the buildings, with any facilities, that the vision refresh has to be at the forefront of everyone's mind.
Okay, thank you. The next question goes back to what the state is planning. And if I could get a refresh on that. So what I think I understood is that there is a major change coming that's not one time. This is like going to be new California policy that really from age 3 and up, we're expecting large population of children to come into the system. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. The proposal right now, and we're still waiting for it to be finalized, but the legislature has passed it and it was the governor's proposal, is to make transitional kindergarten universal, meaning that in 3 years, all 4-year-olds would be eligible. It would be a 3-month phase in for the next 3 years. And that at that point, it would be rebenched to basically add a 14th grade to K-12 there. And then there's also additional funding coming for preschool above and beyond. And since normally the students that were in preschool, if they're expanding preschool funding, that will make almost all 3-year-olds eligible to come into the preschool as well under this plan.
Okay, and do we have an idea? I mean, the state is saying that they're going to pass bonds, but the last time that went on the last time we voted on that, that actually failed. So is the state expecting matching funds? They with Prop 15 and Measure R for November 2020. So what is the state? If you can crystal ball Sacramento, if these don't pass, districts are stuck with this bill or this?
That is the challenge, that districts have to be prepared that there's going to be a mandate to offer transitional kindergarten. And so districts are going to have to be prepared if the state does not come up with facilities money to do what we've had to do for quite a while, which is go out and do local bonds and do other actions. So that's why we're taking a very sophisticated look at all of our elementary schools, underutilized and overutilized facilities. We cannot afford to make an error in rushing to make the right decisions for our elementary facilities, knowing that we're going to need to accommodate more young students.
Yeah, so this ranking, explain to me again how this ranking ties to the increase, the potential increase in very young child enrollment.
So
with that,
this ranking has absolutely nothing to do with that.
It doesn't.
No. So these are the priority school sites that were set forth in the 2016 master plan, which were schools that had little to no work done or had a facility project that was stopped before the master plan could begin. And so, or while the master plan began. So that's one component, and that's why we have the 3 separate boxes. So this is just the green box. So the student housing study, which is really going to look at those other components, is another box, right? And so we have several boxes of needs that will all have to be incorporated into solutions during options development. But what this does is it talks about which schools need the major rebuild. The things that happen with the student housing needs might be a different type of project, which has to do with potentially building or remodeling for kinder, preschool, early childhood development.
So this is not a building list, is that correct?
This is one component of a building
One
list.
component, okay.
Trustee Reckler, if you don't mind, I know this is a really important issue. If you don't mind, if we can go to the next person, keeping in
Can I
mind with the
ask-
4 questions.
Can I
because
ask,
we're on like 5 now.
can I ask one more question?
If you don't mind, I would really like to go to Trustee Smith-Folds, so we're being consistent with everybody. Trustee Smith-Folds?
What was the cost of El Cerrito High School?
I do not have that historical data, but we could certainly get that for you.
What was the cost of De Anza High School?
Again, I'd have to pull up that data. It is in our reports, and if you give us a few minutes, I can report that back.
Okay, if you could report that back to me during this session, that would be great. You talked about campuses you were doing a HVAC analysis on the campuses. Do you know just offhand how many campuses don't have those systems?
Well, it's our schools that are in the everything, I would say, south of APN Way and along the 80 corridor. So I believe that the count is around, it's in the 20 numbers. We have over 30 elementary schools. And so I believe it's in the high 20s of the elementary schools in the Richmond, El Cerrito area that do not have air conditioning.
Thank you. And how many schools are in portables? We know Hercules and Valley View. How many more schools are in portables?
Well, there's portables across the district, and one of the initiatives in the past bonds have been to eliminate portables as we go through the modernization. But there are portables at many of our schools across the district. And again, I can't give you that total number count as far as how many portables or how many sites that have them, but I can provide that for you.
Okay, and then just to
Trustee Smith-Folds, I just did the same thing with.
that was 3, Trustee Phillips. That was 3 questions.
Okay, I thought I checked. I'm checking them off as I go. I thought I checked 4, but
That was
okay,
3 questions,
okay,
and I
okay.
appreciate the recommendation to just ask 4, but all recommendations have the right to be refused.
I know,
So
but
my 4th
just
question is,
wanna
how
vote
do you
in debate?
project what's the cost that you project for Richmond and Kennedy High School? What's the projected cost for those high schools?
It depends on the scope of work.
Right.
I'll go ahead, Ms. Mejia.
Well, again, that's why we will be looking to do site master planning for each one of those school sites, because a high school is such a big, complicated component as well. Some of these schools have existing facilities that are relatively new, and then a bunch of facilities that are not. There's going to have to be some level of understanding of what the scope will be before we'll know the cost, which is why that will be our next step.
The next step is to find the scope of each school and then cost it out based on that. But you're using the pocket of 575 million, correct?
Correct.
Okay, those are all the questions for right now.
Okay, thank you very much. So everyone has gotten a chance to ask at least 4 questions, and everyone also had a chance to ask however an unlimited amount of questions before the meeting. So I am going to ask for a motion to approve this item. Mr. Gonzalez-Foy.
Thanks, President Phillips. My motion is actually a little bit differently, but in line. So my motion is that staff focuses and brings back a facilities master plan on Kennedy High School, Richmond High School, and Stige only at the moment and in that order for rebuild. And sorry, that's my motion. I want to follow up with a comment as to why, if it gets a second.
Is there, so just to clarify the motion, is that you want to limit the list to only 3 schools, and those 3 schools are Kennedy, Richmond, and Stige in that order. That's your motion, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
Thank you, President Phillips. I just wanted to explain my thought behind this. I feel like when we create the master plans with a large number of schools, we set this idea with public that their school's going to get rebuilt. And over many years, people hear constantly the promise that their school's going to get rebuilt. And I am concerned that even with Measure R, which has been an incredible bond by our voters and our taxpayers to give us that money, it is only $575 million. And the reason why I asked for the price of how much it costs to rebuild Pinole Valley and our last elementary school is because if we put that together for Kennedy, Richmond High, and Stige, that's majority of those funds. My hope is that once staff comes back with a facilities master plan and tells us how much it's going to cost to rebuild those 3 schools, we're going to have more funding, and the facilities master plan, the facilities committee can then go back and look at the rest of the schools and prioritize schools according to the money that's left. But I just want to make sure that we focus on those schools that we've all said from the very beginning was the focus of this measure at first, and then that we take in consideration everything else that we need to consider, and that we have a very robust and transparent process for the funds that are left after rebuild of these 3 schools. So that is my intention for why I just want to move it as with this motion. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Would it meet your needs or what you just described if the entire list was approved, but staff was able to give I don't want to use the word recommendation, but give an estimate about how many schools that they thought would actually be able to be done under Measure R, so people are not under false hopes just because there is a list. And the reason that I say that is because the list, so like take Highland, for example, right? So Highland is listed as number 4, on the list. And if there are funds in Measure R, right, to actually rebuild Highland, but Highland doesn't make it on the list, then they may not get rebuilt even though there's money. And what I would like us to avoid is that there ends up being a free-for-all on everything else. And the ill will that could result from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you make a good point. My intention is that we use every dollar, of course. But I do think that the process, as we've heard from different community members, has not felt, I'm trying to think of a positive word, has not felt very inclusive or transparent like we did in previous facilities master plan community engagements. One, because of COVID, right? Just the reality of that. And then two, for other reasons. My hope is that we take a decision tonight on those 3 schools, right? And we say that is our focus moving forward. The money's gonna be decided on those 3 schools. We're starting that as soon as tomorrow. And then we start a process again for the rest of the schools once we know how much funds there are, right? And that might bring back the recommendation of Highland back at the top again, right? But I do feel like I had a lot of challenges with the process. I also think that the state, like Dr. Wold mentioned, is bringing forward in the next couple of years a lot of changes and possible funds. So I just want to make sure that we also take that in consideration, because we might have to change the facilities master plan anyways, right? So that is why. But I hear you, but no, because of that reason, if that makes sense. But I do want to make sure that like there is more space for that, and I actually recommend that that is developed in collaboration with your committee, of course, you know, once we have the scope and strategic plan for those 3 schools.
Can I ask you one more question? Would you, if you don't want, would you feel comfortable doing like the first 5?
Not right now, no, because I want to make sure that we do have available funds for those 3 schools first, right? And that staff focuses only on those 3 schools right now. And then we do a robust process for the rest. To be clear, obviously, we all feel that every school needs to be rebuilt, right? We all feel that, even schools in our own areas that we want to advocate for. But the 2 high schools and Stige, obviously, to me, they're just been waiting for way too long, longer than most, and it's their time, right? So I just want to make sure the funds are fully available for them, and that because we're trying to fit more schools, we don't spread the funds too thin, to make sure that they get equal funds as Pinot Valley or De Anza or El Cerrito, or you know, the other high schools that have been rebuilt.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying. You don't want, for example, we try to do too many projects and then there's not enough money to do Kennedy or do it right, or to do,
Correct.
you know, you know, Richmond, or to do it right. So you want to make sure that they are fully done before. Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. Is there a way to just to make a motion that says that? And the reason is that, like, so what you just said to me, right, is like there's this list, right, and it has 19 schools on it, and you want to make sure that the money is there for Kennedy, the money's there for Richmond, and the money is there for Stige, and you don't want their projects, and I'm adding a little bit to this, but you don't want their projects like diminished, for example, because we try to do too much of something else, right? Is there a way to just say that in your motion? Like to actually say that. So like the motion is this list is approved, but these 3 schools, right, are not, that the budgets are decided for these schools and the scope is done for these schools before anything else is begun. So I'm sorry, the door is open. So you know you don't have the situation that you're describing. Like you could build that into the motion.
But Mr. Phillips, point of order, that's, if you would like to make a secondary motion, can't you do that to say exactly what you just said? And that was 4 questions, but can't you just make that motion yourself? And then let's vote on the motion that Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy has on the floor, or discuss that motion that Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy has on the floor?
So I could make a substitute motion, but instead of making a substitute motion, I am talking to Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy about what essentially would be a friendly amendment, which is why I'm asking him how are his concerns addressed in a way that doesn't require us to do everything over again past the 3. So that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think the motion actually kind of already encompasses that, right? Without calling it out by saying strategic plan on those 3 schools. But I mean, we could clarify it more. I'd be willing to do that. I am not comfortable approving the full list because I do have, right, apart from everything we talked about, right? I also mentioned I do have challenges with the list order, right? And how it was created and the engagement that happened, right? And all that for the rest of the schools, right? So I want that to happen while we're also rebuilding Kennedy and Richmond High, right? And to have a more robust process, right? And that's not because of staff, right? Like staff had to do it in the middle of a pandemic, right? Which is an impossible job, right? But as we move towards a new back to a new normal, we can redo that, right? And I think that we should engage community more. But if you wanted to add into the motion that we ensure funds for those 3 schools, or if you wouldn't mind saying it again, I mean, I think that's fine. I just, I think it's kind of already stated. Well, not stated directly, but, you know, understood.
I'm a little confused now. I'm gonna. So okay. So then I'm clear. So I don't try to. So the list as it is, the whole list, even if we say we are going to prioritize those 3 and make sure that the funding is there for them before we do anything else, you're not comfortable saying that.
That's right. I'm not comfortable with moving the full list.
Okay.
Mr. Phillips, I'd like to call the question.
You would like to end debate?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So this motion is to stop discussion on this item and to vote on the motion that's on the floor. All right. So, Christian. No, this is not the vote on the motion. This is the vote to stop anybody from being. Am I on mute?
No, Trustee Christian was on mute when he was at mute when he was asking you or asking out loud.
Okay.
Where we are.
Oh, so he said, "Are we about to vote?" And I was answering his question, and I said, "This is not on the motion itself that Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy made. This vote is on the motion of Trustee Smith-Folds to stop discussion on this matter, meaning nobody else would be able to talk about this item. That's what we're voting.
Yes, I asked to call the question of the motion for Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy's motion, Trustee Christian. I asked to call the question.
So Trustee Smith-Folds, so
Okay.
Just in order, I'm explaining the motion, which is my job. But that's where we are, Mr. Christian. So you would be voting to basically, so we stop talking about it. That's what we're voting.
Okay, so we don't have a clarification, basically.
Yeah, the discussion stops and then there's just a vote and that's it. So if this passes, then we're not going to discuss it anymore and we're just going to go to the vote.
Okay. So yeah, let's move forward.
So that's a yes to stop discussion. Gonzalez.
Yes, President Phillips, thank you.
Okay.
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Smith-Folds, yes.
Okay, the motion, it will carry. All right, so on to the vote. What was moved was 3 schools and in the following order, which is Kennedy, Richmond, and Stige.
Point of order, Mr. Phillips, you didn't vote. You need to verbalize your vote, don't you?
No, to both. I'm going to go. We're on the vote, and so it was moved by Gonzalez Hoy that there are 3 schools, and those schools are Kennedy, Richmond, and Stige in that order. And that, well, that's the motion. I'll leave it at that's the motion. And it was moved by Gonzalez Hoy. It was seconded by Reckler. And on to the vote, Christian.
Okay, this is this the one that Gonzalez Hoy, or this is which one is this?
This is Gonzalez Hoy's motion. So instead of having a full list with all 19 schools, he's moving a list that only has 3 schools. And those schools are Kennedy, Richmond, and Stige in that order, and nobody else is on the list. So that is his motion. That's what we're voting on.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Gonzalez, so yes.
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips? No. All right, the motion carries. And we are going to move on to the next item. Which is E2, adopt the 21-22 LCAP.
Good evening, trustees. On June 9th, we presented the LCAP to the board. We received public input as part of the public hearing. We also went back and did some additional work with several of our stakeholder groups to refine some of the areas that there were still questions about. You heard some comments tonight from public advocates. We're continuing to work with multiple groups to get it correct. It has not substantially changed other than refinement of language to make it clearer. We're asking the board to approve the LCAP, knowing that the state's budget has not been adopted yet. There will be some additional likely one-time funds coming that would fall into that bracket that we would then follow the process that Dr. Hurst has already outlined for this summer on priorities to bring back at unaudited actuals any adjustments. So we're asking for approval of the LCAP as required by law before June 30th.
Board, any questions? Okay, I'm looking to see. Okay, I see one question, and that's Reckler, or one person question. Reckler?
Yeah, just briefly, are there any material changes between June 9th and now that you need to verbally discuss?
Nothing material. We corrected a couple of the language pieces where there were questions about wording. Several groups said you used one word versus a different piece from their recommendations. So those were updated to make sure that we are aligned with those pieces. We also brought more information into the LCAP as it pertains to the whole totality of the budget. We're not fully where we want to get to, but we're going to continue to work together towards a template to get better each time we bring a budget to this board.
Okay, and then the other big question I have is, there were some internal conversations about how it was difficult to analyze this because data was not what we want, where we want, how we want it. So in this coming year, what do you see? What are the big 3 things in the world of data that are going to improve this and result in better reporting so that we can have better student success and outcomes?
I think you're going to see several really big initiatives. The review that Dr. Hurst is beginning is going to get us to our priorities. We cannot wait to go down that pathway. and have a very specific focus, because that's going to identify with data where the needs are, and then identify the targets and have a actionable plan. We are bringing forward the Who Knew It software program, which is a data ability to actually bring forward measurable data that we can then bring into these reports. We're also refining some of our financial systems and continue to align the MUNIS, which is our financial system, to SACE, which is our special education system, to PowerSchool, which is our student information system, so that money can be tied directly to student outcomes and be able to connect them back and forth. So by this time next year, you should see much different reporting as that infrastructure gets built.
Okay, thank you. And finally, just, I don't know if I need a refresher, I don't know about this, but what new process are we talking about?
So it's
For-
not a new process, it's the ability to actually access the data. What we've been
No,
challenged
I'm
with-
sorry, I was talking about Dr. Hurst, new process for,
it's his review.
his review.
I think he's referring to the Illuminate Ed coming in and doing the analysis for the entire district. That piece, and then the strategic planning process.
Okay.
Yes.
That's it.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. We only had one board member who had questions. And so I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the LCAP.
So move, Person Phillips.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gonzalez-Way. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, board? Okay, one. Okay, Smith Falls.
I just want to make sure that when we're going further with the LCAP, that we keep in mind all the public comment that we had about the LCAP, and we keep in mind all the our PAC members and what they were bringing forward. And we have that now in a documentation, and we make sure that we are always checking in with our PACs and making sure that we're covering the gamut of what is being brought to the forefront, because LCAP should be a living document that we can make sure that we are checking in on, and it's not something that it's not a consensus document that we just check off, every quarter or what have you. It's something that we continue to use as such a living document and make sure that we have the data to back all of that up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So that was the discussion. On to the vote. Mr. Christian.
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, so yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes, with the understanding that we check in with the PACs.
Phillips is yes. So that item passes. And the next item that we're going to move to is E3, adopt the 21-22 WCCUSD budget. And the recommendation is approval with a positive certification.
That is correct. So to quote Hermit's second verse, same as the first, there we are asking for approval with a caveat that we believe that it is important that we continue to keep in mind the FCMAT report, and that at the interim in December, we come back with a review of all of the elements in the FCMAT report at that time, and that we also continue to update the multi-year projections as it pertains to any changes in the structural deficit, so that the board can take action early rather than late and keep the community informed on those pieces. So we do recommend approval of the budget. We know that the state has not adopted their budget. There will be some changes, which we would then bring at the unaudited actuals in September. Anything material, we would come back earlier. Our plan is over the summer, as we get that trailer language, which usually will come out about the second week of July, that we'll start working with the public and our stakeholders on any adjustments. But we recommend approval with the caveat to come back in December and with a positive certification.
Thank you, sir. Board, any questions? I'm looking. Okay, we have questions from Trustee Reckler.
Yeah, so just once again, for the record, were there any major changes between now and July 9th?
There were not. It is the same forms.
Okay. And then if, can you repeat once again what you want at the first interim? What I'd like to see at the first interim is a number of scenarios. I understand that they may change as funding changes, both expense-wise and revenue-wise, but I want to see a number of scenarios about how we're going to balance the budget and get to the end of the structural deficit. Is that your recommendation?
Actually, it's twofold. Because we won't have revenue projections until the second week of January. That's when the governor announces things. The recommendation is at December, we review the FCMAT analysis, that whole fiscal risk health analysis, which was one of their recommendations. We come back with our review of where we're at now after the first 3 months of actuals. We then return to the board in the second meeting in January with exactly what you just discussed, scenarios of revenue, because it would be too premature in December. That was our challenge with the whole report and the change we've talked about, where structural deficits change based on the FCMAT report, first interim, second interim. So it would be January for the second part, but that keeps us continually focusing on this.
Okay, thank you.
President Phillips, I do have a question. Dr. Wool, you said in your last presentation that a substantive change happens in September, right? You get more information in September. Will you be coming back to the board in September with an update on what that money is or what those changes are? Will you come back in September?
Yes, so we will come back to the board in September with the unaudited actuals, which is the one accurate reflection. It will have all the carryover now attributed for committed reserves that are not part of this adopted budget right now. It will have anything that happened as we close the books, and then any new changes in state revenue will also be explained. And the board will approve that in September. Then again, you approve both the annual audit and the first interim in December. So those are the next two big milestones.
And then, but you will, thank you for that. And you will continue to come back to the board if there's any other changes, if there's a pot of money that comes down or if something takes away.
Always.
Okay.
We would, if there's a material change that is significant, we would do what's called a 45-day budget revision. And we would actually call a meeting in July to do so if we had to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so questions were asked. And I'm going to ask for a motion. Is there a motion?
I'll move it, provided that it's written in that we're coming back at the first interim with the FCMAT update.
Second.
Okay, it was moved by Reckler, and that we also come back at the first interim with an update, a FCMAT update. And it was seconded by Gonzalez Hoy. Board, is there any discussion? I'm looking at folks.
Dr. Hurst, I have a discussion point. I just want to make sure.
Go ahead.
I have a discussion, but I just want to make sure that we are getting reports. We're getting constant reports about where we are so we can stay solvent, but we can also do the work of the district and make sure that our students are getting all the resources that they need when we go back in the fall. So for me personally, the more reports, the better. If that's in our 2-on-3s or our 1-on-1s, or if that's Friday memos, or if that's to the entire board, I just want to make sure that we are all knowing where the money's going and how it's getting allocated to our students at all times. Thank you.
Absolutely. I actually talked with the team this week, and we do have a structure in place for that. So we're reporting to the board on a regular basis. So thank you.
Okay, board members, are there any other comments? Okay, I just want to say for myself, and I know that this Dr. Hurst that you just got here, and not even asking for a comment, I know you just got here and you talked about the equity analysis that you want to do, where they look into our finances and whatnot. And I know this motion also asks for an update at the first interim regarding where we are with FICMAT. But for me personally, I need to see a plan to move us into a better financial situation. And I do believe that that plan is going to come from you and your team. I have every confidence that it will come. But for me, it's difficult to vote for this without seeing that. So, but I do have confidence in your work that you will get us there. So, that said, we're on to the vote. Mr. Christian.
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips, no. The motion carries. And now we're going to move on to, now the next item is item E5. We're going to stick a pin in that, and I'm just letting the public know because we have to go back into closed session to have some conversations that relate to this item. So we're going to just put a pin in that and jump over it for the moment. And we're going to go to item E6, which is acceptance of Contra Costa County Office of Education third quarterly report.
So I'm not sure if Mr. Freeze is there. This is the Williams one, correct?
Yes,
So-
this is actually the county report for the third quarter, reporting no deficiencies for the Williams report.
Thank you so much, Mr. Freeze. Board, are there any questions? Okay, no questions. We are going to, can I have a motion to accept this report?
So moved.
Okay, so it was moved by Gonzalez Hoy. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by Christian. Board, any discussion? Seeing none, on to the vote. Christian?
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips, yes. This item, the motion passes. What we're going to do, board, is we're going to go backwards to the items that were on consent that came off. There were two. One is Michael's Transportation Service, Inc. And I believe that Mr. Gonzalez Hoy pulled that item. So, Mr. Gonzalez Hoy, whatever questions you have, sir.
Thank you, President Phillips. I just pulled it so that Dr. Hurst could just give us a little summary about this contract, just because we've gotten a few emails and we had a few members of the public who called in. So I don't have any specific questions. I just wanted to see if they could just talk about it very quickly.
Yeah, so I'll speak to it and I'll let Mr. Freeze jump in as well. This is certainly a fund where parents are actually contributing to this. So this is parent paid for through a fund in the district. So it's placed in this fund. So that's why it says general fund, but it's not coming from district funds. It is parent paid for, and it is a pilot program as well. Anything you want to add to that, Mr. Freeze? Is that accurate?
That is an accurate statement, yes. And nothing else to add this time.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez Hoy, does that wrap it up?
It does. Thank you. I am okay moving this item.
Okay.
I do have a question. I have a question.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Okay. We're going to get there. Mrs. Smith Folds.
Dr. Hurst, you said that this particular this particular contract is paid by parents. Is that what I'm to understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then do we have, and maybe this is something you can get back to me on, but how is transportation done in the district for the other students? We had comments, public comment about that. How is transportation done for our other students, our transfer students, et cetera? That if I could get that information, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, and maybe it can be answered right now.
Okay.
Mr. Freeze, do you know that?
Actually, Dr. Wold can answer that question for special ed.
Yeah, so all of our home to school transportation is that which is mandated in the individualized education plan, which is the IEP for special ed students. The district, because we do maintain neighborhood schools, does not pay for home to school transportation for other non-special education students at this time. So this is a very different contract. It's a fee-based contract where the parents are paying. And again, it's a pilot. We haven't done those. Our open enrollment policy has always been that it's incumbent on the individual to provide transportation should they wish to transfer.
Okay, so Dr. Wool, just let me be clear. So in this district, the district only offers transportation for our students who are classified as special ed. And this transportation we're talking about now is a pilot program that the parents are paying. Is that accurate?
Correct, it's fee-based.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so questions have been asked, and can I have a motion, Mr. Gonzalez-Boy?
Yes, thank you, President Phelps. I move this item.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion, board?
I have discussion point.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
I would like to look into, Dr. Hurst, I would like to look into the equity when it comes to students getting from school to school that may not be their home school. I would like to have, when we are talking about the equity audit, or when we are talking about equity in the school systems, I would like that to be a point that we look at. How do our students who transfer from one school to another school, how do we ensure that they're able to make that transportation is not a barrier to their ability to transfer if we are an open transfer school? Because that's what we are. We're an open transfer school. So how are we making transportation not a barrier for parents to make that decision to transfer their child from one school to another? So I would love for that to come back to the board with your summary of how we make sure that that's not a barrier. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. On to the vote to approve this contract. Christian?
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, yes.
Becker, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips, yes. So the item passes. And we are going to go on now to C19. We already had a presentation about this. This was in Dr. Hurst's report, but we're going to go on to C19, and Trustee Reckler, that was pulled by you.
Correct. I pulled it just because I knew we were having a presentation about it. So if anybody had any questions about the presentation or the contract, we weren't passing the contract before we have the presentation. So that was the reason for pulling it. I mean, I have a question. I have two questions. The first is that I'm hoping that the superintendent will talk about some of the successes that they've had, that you've had with Illuminated Collective. What about the work has impressed you?
So one of the things I'll share is that, and I think I shared this with some of the other board members as well, is that they have worked with San Diego Unified and Long Beach. And what has impressed me, besides the fact that they've saved the district a lot of money, and I can get those reports to the board, but they have like this boots on the grounds approach, and I've shared this with all the board members individually, where they're helping the superintendent, but the entire organization to close these gaps. which is really different from a lot of organizations where they're just handing recommendations down to the superintendent and then expecting the district to implement all of those recommendations. So what really impresses me is that they'll be working alongside of me and supporting me as a new superintendent in making sure that all those processes that I shared with you, so the entire strategic planning processes, that they're right there beside me, supporting me, but being very clear that I'm leading all of this work. And what I've shared with some board members is that we have a large district, 30,000 students. We have significant issues, and it's going to take a team approach. And I have shared that I can't do it by myself, and not even the team that we have assembled, that it's going to take a lot of help to really move our organization. So now we have an organization that's not only willing to give us the recommendations on all of our gaps, but also they've done this in those two organizations that I just shared with you, that they actually are there working with the superintendent and the staff and the principals to move the organization. So that's what really impresses me about their work and what's really different from a lot of other organizations.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Reckler, is that it?
That's it for questions. I do have a motion though, or
Okay.
if nobody else has questions or
Board,
discussion.
are there any other questions? I'm looking at you all. I'm trying to scroll and look at you all. I don't see anything. Okay. So can I have a motion?
Yeah, the motion is that it's approved, but also that there is a, since this is sole sourced, that there is a rationale or a sole source justification that includes some documentation as to how they were chosen in the decision-making process. And that is in case an auditor comes in and looks for documentation as to why the decision was made.
Okay. Is there a second?
I have a question for Trustee Reckler's motion. Trustee Reckler, you're asking for documentation on why this particular firm is being used in case there's an audit. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something that we do all the time? I'm curious about.
With something I think this big and this transformative, it's something that I think would be good to have. And it doesn't exactly apply, but it did come up in some of the recommendations in the facilities audits that we had. And so I think that it's a good thing because when they went through and they audited the way that some of the paperwork was done and some of the decisions were made with our facilities, they did note that not everything had an awesome justification.
So would this be a practice that you would want to be talked about for all of our things, or is there a certain criteria that it fits under?
So I did, thank you for asking that. And I think that's a really big project because I was thinking of things of like when a school like hires like a, like a yoga breathing like whoever a school hires, it's actually a pretty big process to figure out, okay, are we bidding out all of these things? I mean, it's almost impossible. And I'm sure that we don't have a sole source funding policy, but I just thought for something that was this transformative or potentially transformative, that we should document it and have it just in the record. This is why I chose them. This is why they impressed me. This is my decision making. Bam, it gets attached to the contract. And if it ever gets audited or somebody questions it, we have it in there.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Reckler.
Is there a second?
President Phillips, I apologize. I was wondering if Trustee Reckler could just repeat her motion.
Sure, Trustee Reckler.
Thank you.
Sure, that it's passed with a written justification as to why this particular firm was hired.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Board, any discussion?
I have discussion. I just want to make sure that when we're doing things that we're setting clear policy, that we're using it for everything. Like when we talked about if leadership should come and we should have them do, you know, if leadership should do our governance training, then we should have had something attached there. Like I want to make sure that we're doing things, or at least a reason why we're doing things. I want to be clear as to why we're doing it and having the kind of the parameters around that. Are we doing it because Trustee Reckler said it's transformative, it's something that's going to like shift the district, so we need to have an attached kind of summary? Or are we doing it because it's, you know, X, Y, and Z? I just want us to be clear so it's not done arbitrarily, and that we make sure that the superintendent understands why we're asking for something that may have a paragraph attached to it, and then some other things that may not. So staff understands why we're asking for it and why we're not. So we're setting clear precedent. I don't have a problem so much with the summary. I just want to make sure that if we're doing it this time, we have a reason why. And so we will go on to do it other times. So everyone's clear as to why we're doing it. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna try to get back in order. Mr. Christian, did you have any comments?
No.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy, did you have any comments?
No comments, President Phillips.
Okay, Mrs. Reckler?
I agree with Trustee Smith-Folds, and I'd like to thought partner with you on it. I've actually been thinking this over for days about how we might policify this and put it into policy. You know, so I think there's something there to be explored in the future. Yeah.
Okay. My comments, I just want to say that I do support this contract. I support the equity analysis. What I have heard for the last year from multiple stakeholders is that we want things to be different, that we don't want to send children back to the same old. And this is part of the process of transformation. This is the beginning of the reimagination that everyone has been asking for. So this is very necessary, and it is aligned with what multiple board members, all board members at one time or another have said, and our community, and our, you know, our staff. So, which I include as part of community. So anyhow, on to the vote. Mr. Christian?
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez-Hoy, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Falls, yes.
Phillips, yes. The motion carries. Board, we have, it's 9:25, and we have completed all of our action items. We've completed the ones that were, all of the action items except E5. And then we've completed the two things that were pulled off of the consent calendar. We don't have any discussion items on this evening. What I would like to do while it's still early, it's 9:25 or relatively early, is I want you guys to be able to do your board comments. So item G, and then after that, we're gonna adjourn back into closed session to finish that up. So Mr. Christian, on G, do you have any comments or whatnot?
Yeah, just the comments, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just wanted to say, just thank all the staff and everybody for working hard and diligently, and that we continue to push forward and do better in our district. And we got a long ways to go, and we just continue to push forward. And everybody have a good evening.
Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thanks, President Phillips. I echo what Trustee Christian said. I just want to thank everybody who's doing summer school right now, all of our staff, principals, classified, credential staff. I'm really excited to hear what they're doing. I'm hearing great things from families so far. So really happy about that. And I just want to thank staff for all their work. I do have one request, which is I would love to get an update about the virtual school at the next meeting, if possible, even if included just in Superintendent Hurst's update. I haven't seen much about the school, and I'm getting a little concerned, that we haven't seen much communication about that. So I would love to see an update on that. I want to thank Ms. Ifeli for her work. She's been directly supporting Trustee Reckler and I in the charter committee, and she's amazing. And not just that, but even before that, staying up late with us at the board meetings for all these years. So I just want to say thank you to her and wishing her the best in her future journey. And last two things, I want to thank all of you for appointing me to the Crespi renaming committee. It was such a wonderful time to be with the community. And I'm just so excited for the renaming and the potential it's going to have for the Crespi community to start new next year. With their pilot and just with this amazing new name and icon. As she celebrates her 100 years in September, might be a good time to celebrate. So I'm just very excited for that. And I want to thank all of you for giving me that special moment. And I want to say lastly, a lot of thanks. Lastly, thank you to Superintendent Hurst. I am already feeling so much more relaxed that you're at the helm. And I appreciate your leadership. You have fit it right in, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you, President Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy. Mrs. Reckler.
I too want to thank everybody who's working summer school. I thank you for everything that you're doing for our kids. I also want to finish thanking all the graduates because we had a few after the last board meeting, and I just had such a good time at the El Cerrito High School graduation. And I want to request and thank you all who came. I wasn't expecting you, and you all showed up. And I want to recommend that, and I've heard plenty of feedback from Trustee Area 5 is that they want to continue graduations on the football field. So let's buy a stage and stick it under the bleachers and do it there forever and ever. I also want to thank Ms. Sabelli for her years of service. I'm glad it wasn't last week when I was like on the verge of tears with all the Kensington retirements. So now I can compose myself. And thank you for your many years of service. And I'm really sorry to see you go. I've really enjoyed working with you for all these years. And just your attention to detail and the way you've supported us all and the way you've supported, all the business office and the executives. I mean, I really couldn't ask for any more. Your professionalism and your kindness and the way you jumped into a new position doing the charter school functions and did a great job, and so enjoyed working with you, and congratulations, and I hope you'll stay in touch and have a great time in your new endeavors. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Smith-Folds.
Thank you, everyone, thank you to the community for coming and listening. I want you to know that your voice was heard about public comment. And again, this was something that we tried. We will have further discussion about it and have to talk about it as a board. My following comment, and thank you I did appreciate going to the graduations. I thought they were lovely. I think that Dr. Hurst, I would like to have someone who is able to do sign language at our graduations and during our speeches. I found that that's one thing that we didn't have. And if we could have that, I think that would be an additive to our graduations, is to have a sign language person there. And we have some amazing staff that knows ASL fluently that would hopefully be able to help us in that category. We also have many classes that are taught in some of the high schools, sign language classes that are taught. I just want to bring that to the forefront. The following statement I have, it's to my colleagues, to my fellow board members. I just want to read something that's been sitting in my mind for a while. The educational system is terrified of exposure. It walks around with a fear of what if people knew. It gathers its friends and enemies closer to itself and holds them in control through money, power, policies, practices, and a normalized understanding of this is the only way. The education system The educational system I'm demanding is one that will not do to our kids what is successfully done to most of us. It will not allow only some of us to squeeze through the door and then politely demand that we close it behind ourselves. It will not quietly set policy that makes neurodiverse and learning different feel as if their only way through is to struggle through. It will not subvert its foundation of spreading one-sided avoidance history because it fears what pulling back the curtain will do. It will not continue to create a Berlin Wall of disagreement between itself and social justice. See, I believe the system messed up. The educational system messed up. I believe it overreached. It overreached with all of us. We are in this position and the accountability should be shifting. We have the ability to make real significant changes. We need to be very, very careful. Now that this system is setting up new methods to manipulate us. It's calling us to be its partner. The using and misusing is becoming absurdly abusive. This abusive system is trying to court us, courting us after it's already been grooming us. It's trying to have us do its dirty work, become its partner in hurting others. We can't do it. We need to see the system for what it is. We need to hear the whispering in our ears. We need to feel the pulling of us back into its old ways. We can't be the same kid who just took the system at its word. Get this degree, it will provide you opportunities. Follow this path, don't worry about others. We cannot be enticed by its shining opportunity. We are here to serve, to work, to fight. We were put in these positions as board members to interrupt the story. We must wake the sleeping by banging the pots of inequity and keep screaming, what about the most marginalized? We must splash water on the face of the gaslit. This current system is not meant for everyone's success. We must face that truth and arm and prepare ourselves and be able to resist as we push forward. We cannot be corrupted by its power. We cannot be lulled to sleep by its ideas to not rock the boat. We must fight. We must push for equitable policies and lay protective fences and boundaries around these kids so they are not harmed by the current educational system they are forced to go through. We must speak over the mute buttons. We have to carry this message with the cameras on because we are ready to face the barking dog of a politically and monetarily based system. And when the cameras are off, with our conversations must continue with our own communities. The point is we have to always fight. We need to be the screaming shadow behind the educational system, the eyes over its decision-making shoulder. We must be the thorn in its side and the splinter in its paw. We must not allow the system to lay hands on our integrity or purpose and not use us to hit our teachers, admin, staff, volunteers, counselors, paraprofessionals, parents, or anyone else that touches these kids. We all know the educational system personally and historically. It will not change on its own. It must be forced. We see it. We have to call out the abusive system, the inequities, the privilege, all the abuse it spreads like the seeds on fertile ground. We are here as a whole community, and I pray as a whole united executive board to pull the system up from the root and say you will not abuse these kids anymore. The system will straighten up and act right for these kids, or it will be dismantled from the inside out. This is our challenge, and we must accept it. We as a board and as a community need to fight. We are burdened with glorious purpose to change, disrupt, and dismantle. So what is our do different? We need a clear anti-racist district statement. We need equity to run in our veins like blood. We must be bold and unapologetic about who we want to be and clear about who we will no longer be. We will not be groomed or courted by an educational system created to harm Black students, brown students, the poor, or other marginalized students, teachers, and parents of WCCUSD. We have to be innovative, creative, bold, unapologetic, and righteously angry to create from the ashes and the scraps the new educational system that will truly work for all students. We have to be different. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Trustee Smith-Folds. I would like to thank everyone who is working right now in summer school. My two oldest children are back in school, and they're really happy to be there. And, you know, I really thought about what it means for them to be in summer school and what it means for our district to have an expanded summer school offering. And then I looked at like what they're actually doing. And it dawned on me that what we have right now um, in our district are thousands of kids who are really in a summer camp. It's summer school, but they're really in a summer camp. And usually, for children to be able to participate in this kind of summer camp, you know, they have to pay a lot of money. Parents have to pay a lot of money. And so I'm looking for, you know, silver linings and clouds. And the beautiful thing that I see right now happening is that, not that I'm happy that about the pandemic, because I'm not, but the beautiful thing that has come out of this is that there are a bunch of low income and moderate income kids who are experiencing basically a real summer camp for the first time ever in their lives. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I think that it's an experience that children should be able to have every summer, um, regardless of whether they live in a more, you know, expensive place or live in places that are not. And so, I mean, I know things cost money, uh, but I just think it's absolutely beautiful because a lot of these kids would not have any ability to be in a summer camp, a real summer camp, if it wasn't for what's happening right now. And I just think that is glorious. And I'm really thankful to all of the administrators and all of the teachers and all of the classified folks who are there every day, giving these children an experience this summer that honestly they should be able to get every single summer. For my family, thank you. Um, and I see it every day, and it's absolutely beautiful what you guys are doing with these kids um, this summer. So thank you very much. And then, Mr. Felly, I haven't really worked very closely with you, but I do want to say thank you very much for your service to this district. And I've not heard anything but good things about you. So your contribution is very much appreciated. So that said, we just finished item G, which is comments from the board. The next scheduled Board of Education meeting is on July 14th. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask for a motion, and I'm just going to let the public know what's going on. Before I do this, we're going to go back into closed session. We're going to finish up some stuff. Then we're going to come back out. We'll do the report out of closed session. And then we'll take up item E5, which is the Chief Academic Officer position. So can I have a motion from the board to adjourn back into closed session from somebody?
I'll move that.
Okay, so it's been moved by Reckler. Mr.
Second.
Gonzalez. Hoy. All right, moved by Reckler, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez Hoy. Board on to the vote. Mr. Christian, you're first.
Christian, yes.
So yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Phillips, yes. Okay, so we are adjourning back into closed session. And we already allow people to do public comment on the closed session items at the very beginning. Thank you. And public, we will be back in the Zoom to finish the meeting.